Tuesday, November 18th. Just quickly, I'm going to do some introductions. I'm Holly Durlow-Babcock, the chairperson of the board. To my left is Beth Williams and Kate Stoll, who are also board members. Brian Bumpus is here representing the administrative team at the high school. He's our athletic coordinator. To my right is our superintendent, Andy Corey, assistant superintendent in charge of curriculum and instruction. Thank you. Gina Bergshog. And Krista Whalen is another school board member here. We are expecting all of our school board members to be here. We're missing Tom Solon and Liz Brown coming momentarily, hopefully. And Cindy Van Kona did say she would be late. So, that being said, we only have four of us, and I need to appoint a process observer. So, is there anyone who'd like to do that? Krista, thank you.
See, that's the problem with only four of us. Starting.
Yeah, I know. I could have waited to start.
That's the problem when you show up on time. Exactly.
And we do have an agenda adjustment. We need to amend the agenda to include under deliberations board action relative to acceptance and expenditure of the fiscal year 2021 unanticipated revenue associated with the CARES Act and any other local, state, or federal resources. Is that pretty much the way we want it?
That's correct.
Okay. Are there any, and that's basically because we're having a public hearing on the CARES Act funding, and then we'll be able to vote on whether or not we'll accept it. And then, are there any other adjustments to the agenda? Okay, great. So, being none, I need to move forward with agenda adjustments. Minutes, sorry. I do have an amendment to the minutes. So, I need to approve the minutes. We need a motion to approve the minutes from October 21st, 2020. The following amendments have been offered. Page 4, second paragraph, amend the second sentence to read, in the past, with some of the lower sections, particularly visual and performing arts, there were blocks to accessing them. Page 8, line 33, replace project with projector. We also need to, on page 11, line 47, we need to replace Karen Jew. She is not on our board. Probably Kate Stoll is who you were referring to. And we need to replace, on page 8, line 33, I already read that one, sorry, I'm confused. Page 12, line 28, the second word should be if, not of.
I can't get the motion, but I have one other.
And are there any other?
I had one other that maybe I'm crazy, but it has in attendance that Bob was here, but Gina speaking about things, and Gina not in attendance on the minutes. Is this from the 21st?
The 21st, yeah.
Yeah.
I did not attend the co-op.
Okay.
So I think that it was, so the attendance is correct, but I think it was when Bob was speaking, it was put into Gina was speaking.
So I'll let Dawn know that. We can replace
Sure.
Gina with Bob.
Yeah, it's in the text of
In the text of the
is
minutes,
correct.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So moved by Beth,
Second.
seconded by Kate. Liz was not here, so all in favor? 4-0 and 1 abstention. Welcome, ladies. We have Jess Hugh and Annie Hazelton are here also to represent the student body. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Okay. So those are done, I think. Is that all I have to do? I can't. Okay, great. Nominations, resignations, and correspondence.
Yes, I have a resignation tonight. It says, Dear Superintendent Corey, I am writing to inform you of my intent to resign as of June 30th, 2021. I am resigning in an effort to pursue new and exciting professional opportunities. I am deeply grateful for both the opportunity to have served the district and to develop as a professional over these last 11 years. I wish to tender my resignation now so that the district may begin their search for a replacement as early as possible. I am happy to assist and support in the transition as requested, and that comes to us from Rick Bonds, principal at the high school. I'd like to publicly thank Rick. He has done a tremendous job over his tenure, and it will be a big loss for us, but we wish him the best.
Absolutely. Yeah, I second what Andy said. We all really appreciate all the work and service that Rick has given us for 11 years. Do we need to accept the resignation?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I need a motion to accept the resignation of Principal Barnes.
Sadly.
Sadly. Motion by Beth, seconded by
Second.
Krista.
Sadly.
Sadly, we're all sad. We are.
Just vote against it?
That's what I was wondering. I was like-
Well, no, I mean.
I realize, yeah.
I think it's a very nice message to Rick, but I think we probably need to approve his resignation letter. So, all those in favor?
For Rick's resignation to accept.
Sadly. Opposed?
Grumpily.
And abstentions? So so we're at 6, we're at 1, 2, 3, 5, 0, 1, because Tom was not able to be here when the whole motion was made, so. Okay, great,
That's it for nominations, resignations, and correspondence.
okay. So at this point in the meeting, we're going to open the floor for public input. We ask that when you come to the mic, you state your name and address for the record. We ask that you keep your comments to 2 minutes or under, and that you remain focused on topics that are on our current agenda. And as always, we ask for respectful comments. So at this point, the floor is open for public comment.
Hi, my name's Heather Ryan, and you said our address? Is that-
Yes.
Okay, we live in 18 Sawtell in Brookline. I have a 6th grader at CSEA and an 8th grader at Hollis Brookline. And first of all, I just want to thank all of you for what you're doing, the administration, the staff. It's been fantastic, and your job's hard, and better you than me, so thank you for what you're doing. And I'm just here to talk about the COVID situation over the holidays. In August, we were really on the fence about whether our kids were going to come in or be remote. And we chose to come in solely because of what you did here. I watched it from home. I watched you spell it out. I love to read it. It was very clear. So we sent our kids, and we're very happy that we made that decision. With that said, in the holidays coming up, we're concerned about COVID fatigue. I mean, I have COVID fatigue, right? Our favorite thing to say is Rona ruins everything. And so we're concerned that people will be gathering, that people will be traveling, and maybe not following all of those precautions that we've been following. And I believe because we've been following those, that's why our numbers are so low in this area. I'm from the Midwest. They didn't take it quite as seriously as we did initially. My friends are physicians there, and they're drowning now. Drowning. I don't want us to be in that position. My hope is that we consider being remote just in between the holidays, not forever, but just for a short period of time, maybe Thanksgiving to December, maybe a little into January, see what the numbers are looking like. It just can't hurt. I know, like I said, our numbers are low. Unfortunately, though, we don't live in a bubble. We would like to believe that we live in a bubble in Hollis Brookline because it's safe and we feel that as one as a community and we're all on board, but we don't. We shop in Nashua. We shop in Amherst. We shop in all these different places, and sometimes even with the best intentions, you just can't help it. It just happens. And so I guess what I'm just hoping that during your consideration is to know that that there are several parents who feel that way. I think sometimes maybe we're the silent majority. I hope we're the silent majority. But that's our request. And also primarily just to thank you for what you're doing, understanding you're volunteering, and we really appreciate all the work that you've done.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Sue Conley, 59 DuPaul Gould Road in Brookline, New Hampshire. I'm just going to say ditto. Thank you very much for coming to speak as a parent, as a teacher. On Tuesday, we had to go remote like that, and I just wanted to bring up the fact that I had students who met with me during study hall who said being remote wasn't a bad thing, and that they actually felt a reduced level of stress, knowing that we could meet their needs with our schedule and with the changes that we've made that you all put in place, which has been outstanding. As teachers in the school, I've heard some teachers say that they are concerned about their hometowns being remote and them having to be in two places at one time. So I hope to echo that request that you consider going remote for just a short amount of time so we remain safe and healthy, not only physically but emotionally as well, for the students and the staff and our community. My son is in Oregon and is not coming home so he can stay safe. So thank you for all of your efforts. Please take that into consideration, and I hope that we can make that decision. Thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you.
Hi, Tiffany Testa, 101 Moore Hill Road. And I wanted to comment to the board on something that's on the agenda having to do with program of studies. So there were proposed changes to the program of studies, and I want to talk about the serious concern about lowering the expectations for graduation in the sciences. Currently, right now, we're above the standard of the state requiring 3 years of science for our students, and there was, to my surprise, put in there to lower the standards to 2 years. And this is hard for me to speak about, not only from a teacher point of view of over 20 years experience in math and science, but as a community member who has watched this district put priority into critical thinking, 21st century thinking skills, the ability to have our students have critical argumentation, scientific process, and thought. I've seen this district over time get rid of a position in Spanish to allocate the resources at the lower levels to STEM and math. And what I saw is that that resulted, among other things, in a system that benefited or served our top students at the math level. I looked through the program of studies, and what I see is all of these options for science require prerequisites. And what I read is that it says here, that there's a concern that the chemistry for those that are not science inclined is too challenging. That to me sounds like an accessibility problem and an equity problem. And I just don't want to see our students that might not, our top students won't be hurt by this because every single one of them will take 4 years of science and probably AP this and AP that. But if we lower our standards for our students, they may choose not to take a third year. And in the year of COVID and a pandemic and having to be scientifically literate, we cannot say that we care about this and then lower our standards. That's not meeting the needs, that's lowering our standards. I don't want us to lower our standards on our kids. Every single kid can learn the science. If the courses don't match them, forensics, any of them, there's so many. I'm teaching infectious disease because why would I teach biology any other way right now in this moment? So please, please look at it a little bit more deeply, because it's going to hurt a lot of our students that choose not to engage in that course. And I don't think we do it for English, and I don't think we do it for math. We cannot do it for scientific process. And all of those things that we say are important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Carol Swanson, 29 French Mill Road, and I'd like to echo the first two adults who had come up. I have some concerns over this coming up holiday. I do have a son coming home this Friday, and he won't be going back until February 1st for safety reasons. They had over 72,000 tests at his college and only 18 cases. They've really controlled it. I feel like we've really controlled it. I think it's been wonderful being in the school, being with the students, meeting the students, getting to know the students. We need to do that as teachers in order to build that trust if we do have to go remote. And I am one who was worried about going remote. I was actually in the building Tuesday when we weren't sure, Monday, whatever day that was. And I thought, well, let's stay here and see how this goes, but couldn't stay, so I went home to see how that went. And it went fine. I was really happy. Again, I had some students who didn't really put their screens on and things like that, but the ones that I knew were like, okay, I'm like, put your screen on, and it worked. So I just think as you are considering the time frame between Thanksgiving and Martin Luther King Day or whatever, just the safety and health and the ability for some of your staff to see elderly parents and people who this could be their last holidays. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't believe there's anyone else out there. Anyone? Great. At this point, I'll close public input, and we need to move on to our public hearing. I need a motion to recess until the conclusion of the public hearing.
So moved.
Moved by Beth.
Are we allowed to open it this early? I know you can.
What time
Well,
is it?
I think it was posted at
6:15.
The public hearing was posted at 6:25.
No, on our agenda, it was posted in the paper at 6:15.
The one I have says 6:25.
That's on our agenda. It was posted in the paper at 6.
Well, the one that, so it's supposed to be 6:25.
The official posting is 6:15.
Right, so it can't be before 6:15.
Oh, so this was,
You know what, why don't we do this?
no, that's fine, if it's okay. I just didn't want us to be told that, have someone show up at 6:25.
Right, no, that makes a lot of sense, that makes perfect sense. If it was posted in public notice at 6:15, but this amended agenda was 6:25, can we move to the winter athletic protocols and do that
Yep.
first, and then we'll open up for that? At this point, though, I know, Brian, you're representing all of the administration. We'll move on to program of studies after the public hearing, because I
Okay.
think we might have a few conversation points on that, but that's really not part of our discussions this morning today.
So do you want me to do our winter athletic proposals first, or do you want
I
me to do
think
the
so,
reports?
is that okay? We're gonna break it up.
I think there's gonna be some questions though too, so.
I'm sorry, Beth, what did you say?
No, I was just thinking maybe the principal's report first, and, because I have some more questions about that. If you're looking, are you just trying to get like?
So I
5
need about 10 minutes,
Okay.
so I think if we do winter sports, that'll take 10 minutes, and then we'll move on to the rest. We're gonna break the principal's report into two things, the principal's report and the winter sports report. So I'm gonna ask Brian to do the winter sports report first. Not that sports isn't gonna take more than 10 minutes, but I
Yep.
feel like it might be a little shorter.
No problem.
You only have 10
Um,
minutes, go.
Yep, 10 minutes, you got it. I can make that happen.
You're on the clock, Brian.
So, basically, what I submitted was just an outline of what we're looking to do for our winter season. The policies and procedures that we use for the fall, I mean, honestly, I think they worked very well. We had some tweaks along the way that, you know, we found some things that worked and some things that didn't, but we were able to adjust on the fly, and I really think we have those policies and procedures really were pretty solid in guiding us through that fall season. So as far as our health and safety procedures and game and practice procedures, those are going to remain relatively unchanged, other than we're going to be moving indoors as opposed to outdoors. The things that are going to change are our dates, obviously. So the NHIAA has set some dates for us. Those dates are on November 30th. We have the ability to start small group sessions where teams can come in and do some skills work with their coaches. On December 14th, we can start official practices, and our first competition in any sport will not be allowed to occur until January 11th. Additionally, since I submitted this report, the NHIAA has also come out with our season dates. So the last date to compete is going to be February 28th for the majority of our sports, with several of them ending actually earlier in February, whether it's February, I think it was 3rd or February 13th being the last day to compete in a handful of them. So
What was the date you gave, Brian, from the NHIAA?
for which?
End? The last?
The absolute last day for regular season competition would be February 28th.
Thank you.
Yep. So really, the majority of the changes that I wanted to highlight tonight really are sport-specific items. So winter is kind of a different animal where it's a little bit more challenging to give like a blanket statement of this is how we're going to run things. You know, in the fall, most sports are run outdoors with the exception of volleyball and cheer. So most of those sports are able to follow kind of the same model and the same routine. In the winter, we have a lot of sports that participate off-site. So swimming, skiing, just to name a few, gymnastics. And again, there's that indoor element that is kind of the challenge in overcoming for the winter season. So what we did was we went through each of our sports and came up with some different considerations for how we think we can best manage those sports for the winter season. And I just want to, you know, these really are just our recommendations at this point. So I'm obviously happy to entertain questions and have discussion around any of this. So I'll just go sport by sport, and I'll be quick. I know I only have 10 minutes here. So for basketball, again, we're going to try and follow kind of a similar model to what volleyball followed in the fall. Our idea is to cap the number of rostered athletes at 15, which is the NHIAA tournament roster number. So it's not, you know, we didn't just pull that out of thin air. JV sub-varsity teams would start off practicing only at this point and would be subject to available facilities, which is going to be a challenge, just trying to find space for them to practice in. And then we'll reevaluate whether they compete as the season goes on. Unified basketball, we were able to run a very successful, I feel, intramural unified soccer program in the fall. By not having any practices on Mondays, that opens up the facilities for unified basketball to come in and run an intramural program again during the winter in the same fashion that we did with unified soccer. Bowling. The big thing for us with bowling is that we are looking to limit them to only practice and compete out of our home facility, which is Merrimack 10-pin. We wouldn't send them all over the state to these different bowling lanes. And again, we would cap the number of participants at 15. So, and that's just to help with social distancing at the lanes, because we also practice at the same time as, you know, a handful of other schools. So we felt 15 was reasonable. Cheerleading, fortunately, we had the fall to kind of figure cheerleading out. So we're comfortable with how cheerleading ran during the fall. The only catch for the winter is that cheering in a gym is a lot different than cheering on a field at games. So unfortunately, given the size of our gym and the space that we have on our end line, it's going to be pretty difficult to have them cheer during a game. We may be able to carve some space out, you know, in some bleachers somewhere, but it's not going to be that same, you know, atmosphere that you get with the cheerleaders on the end line that you typically would during a normal season. Gymnastics. We're looking to follow the same kind of protocol as we're looking for with bowling, where they practice and compete out of Gymnastics Village. We are recommending that the student athletes that participate in gymnastics learn remotely, which I'll touch on once I get through the rest of these sports. Ice hockey, the same thing. We would recommend that they would learn remotely. We have been informed that if we elect to move forward with ice hockey and our co-op format, that the Derryfield students will definitely be learning remotely, regardless of what we choose. Skiing, being our only outdoor winter sport, was pretty easy to kind of push forward. The only catch with skiing is going to be transportation. And again, we're going to compete and practice only at Crotched Mountain. We're not going to be going to Sunapee and all these different places to participate. But transportation is going to be a significant hurdle with skiing. As it stands right now, we're limited with our buses. We can't get any buses for athletic events before 4:15, basically. So when we have a 3:30 meet on a Thursday, we're just not going to have busing for them. So I'm not sure exactly what the solution is on that. My gut is that we're going to have to rely on parents to transport their kids, which we're encouraging anyways. And we're just going to have to be very forthright and upfront with parents right from the get-go that this is going to be the expectation. And to be honest with you, from the fall season, most parents wanted to transport their kids anyways. We had, several soccer games that we didn't even need a bus because parents were driving their kids to and from the event. They just didn't want them on the bus. So I don't necessarily think that's going to be a huge issue. Swimming, there's been a lot of talk around swimming and how to manage swimming. Unfortunately, a lot of pools have shut down around the state. We're fortunate that our home facility has not. So right now, the talk with the NHIAA is to run and host virtual meets where basically you're going to practice and compete in your own pool. Coaches are going to do time trials, and then everyone will submit those numbers, and that will be the race for the week. So we are going to limit the number of people that practice on any given day to 10 participants, which is a manageable number according to the National Boys and Girls Club. Indoor track, this is a tough one. So all of the colleges and universities have shut down. We have no access to any of the universities in the state to run any indoor track meets at this point. So we're working with our area schools, Milford and Sauhegan and the Hampshire Dome, to hopefully pull together some mini meets for our athletes during the season. That's kind of a work in progress at this point, and I'll update everyone as we move forward with that. And then, last but not least, wrestling. So obviously this is a challenging one, just given the nature of the sport. So we've come up with some protocols that we feel will help with sanitation and just kind of keeping things contained. So, in a typical season, we'd have, 26 to 30 wrestlers on the mat at the same time. We're going to cut that number down. We're not going to allow wrestlers to wrestle with anybody but one partner for the entire season. We're going to wrestle in dual meets only. We're not going to compete in any individual tournaments, and that's basically we mandated that as a state committee, that there's going to be no individual tournaments. We're going to require our wrestlers to disinfect with body wipes prior to and following any practice session or match. And Mr. Corey actually had a great suggestion where for our dual meets, the plan would be to actually roll out 2 mats. And as soon as a match is over, we would rotate onto the next mat so that the next group can wrestle, and while they're wrestling, we would sanitize and spray the mat that was just used so that it's clean and ready for the next pair to come on. So with that, the remote piece. So what we did was, what's happened is when we started talking with Derryfield about ice hockey, basically they came to us and told us that their athletes were going to learn remotely. That kind of sparked, us to start thinking about our own sports, and we've heard of some other districts that are requiring their athletes to learn remotely. As we went through our sports, we kind of looked to the higher risk, offerings that we have. So ice hockey being a big one, which is obviously, that's around the state right now. That's just a big hot topic. We felt that was a no-brainer to recommend that they learn remotely. Wrestling with the contact piece, again, same thing. It seemed like a no-brainer to have them learn remotely. And then gymnastics. So gymnastics, for us, the big piece of that was the fact that they're competing in a facility with several other schools, with a lot of equipment that may be difficult to sanitize, in between student athletes. So, for us, that was kind of the sticking point was why we would recommend that they would learn remotely. I don't know if we, at least as an athletic department, have the latitude to mandate something like that, but that would be at least our recommendation to those athletes that are participating in those sports.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions on that? Liz, go ahead.
Well, I think one of the obvious questions is, do we have any control over students who don't participate in the school's programs, but basically are participating in those same exact activities? Just, we have hockey players, gymnastics, I think are the two obvious ones, which have, robust programs that don't rely upon the school, or, we allowing those kids to be in, but if you participate in the school program, you're required to go remotely.
Sure. That's why I don't know if that's the right answer, to make them, to tell them they have to go remote for reasons just like that.
We certainly don't have a policy on this.
Right.
That was one of my concerns, and for that reason, and also just that it may force some people that they can't, that it might not be an option for them. So to make that, to force that decision, I really worry about that. And like you said, there's a lot of students that are participating outside sports and are doing well and making smart choices with that, but still attending school.
And that was another drawback that we had discussed was, there are going to be students who are participating who may not have the ability to stay home by themselves during the day. So it puts parents in a really difficult spot where now they have to choose between, their jobs and their kid playing a sport. And we didn't really want to put people in that position.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one. It's having raised two boys that sports were such an integral part of their lives, and they need that for their mental health and their well-being. And that's apparently going to be what I'm going to chant all night long, is the kids' mental health and well-being, which, if you know me very well, that's not really my first priority typically. I'm struggling with this. I know, because I want to be able to keep as much normalcy for these kids as we possibly can, but remote days are very, very difficult on working parents.
Yep.
And, even the one we had this week was very difficult on many parents. So I don't know. And just putting that extra burden of transportation where a child is remote but now needs to go get someplace without bus transportation, it just makes the whole thing more complicated. I don't have the right answer. I wish I had a solution for you, and I guess I appreciate the fact you've been struggling with it, and I know that there's a lot of thought that goes into it. So it's not that I'm sitting here picking on you, because I know you've worked really hard. I just don't know what to do when I'm thinking about all these other things that are important to these kids. So I'm entertaining anybody's creative solutions.
I felt like you had something to say.
I have a couple of questions. What are the co-op facilities that are going to be available for sports for the winter season?
So co-op facilities. So if we follow the same setup that we had in the fall, we'll have access to the high school mini gym during the week and the middle school main gym during the week.
Okay.
And then weekends, we were breaking tables down anytime we had a volleyball game, and the maintenance staff was coming back in to set them up afterwards. So, it's a hurdle, but not something that we can't overcome. Weekends we were able to access the main gym at the high school, which was great. We had the live camera for volleyball games, and it worked really well.
Okay. What is the policy or procedure as far as having the school facilities available for sports if the schools are not open for classes?
If we went to 100% remote learning, we would still participate in sports.
So you'd still open the facilities up for sports?
Correct.
May I piggyback on that? Because that was the one thing, just the dates that they shared.
Oh,
just,
sorry, I
No, that's
sorry,
okay.
I did
No,
skip
I just
over
wanted to
that.
make sure, and again, this is one of the same with Liz. I don't have all the answers for this, but if we are, able to start, December 14th, and then practices are able to resume January 4th, we're going to talk about it later tonight, about maybe being remote after the Christmas, New Year's holiday. And, I did talk to Brian a little bit, if we don't allow student athletes to participate during that time, we're going to significantly cut into their season, big time. So it's a concern. I don't have all the answers, but when you're saying, I'm glad to hear that's the answers. We could potentially open for that, but it's something we need to think about and discuss.
Yeah, no, I would definitely support opening for the athletes. I think Brian and Ron have proven, along with Ally at the middle school, that we could run a very successful program in the midst of this. I think to Liz's point, we wanted to put the idea out tonight. We don't necessarily have to make a decision tonight because we're really only looking at tryouts from the 14th to the 18th, and we don't see ourselves going anywhere until after the holidays in terms of a meet. So we do have some flexibility. I will share that there would be a concern for some families because their son or daughter just is not a remote learner. And now they'll have to choose potentially between a sport and remote. And to Liz's point, the mental health piece is important. There's that side of it. There's the other side of it. We would be taking approximately another 60 or 80 students out of the high school daily and reduce the number of in-person students, which could help on the other side. So this is when we don't have an answer. We're very confident that we have the protocols in place to have a successful winter and deal with whatever comes up. But we are not sure on the remote. And ultimately, we're here to teach kids about academics, so we have to make that the top priority. So I wouldn't want somebody who's not a remote learner to choose, for them in particular, a learning environment that doesn't allow them to be successful. So my suggestion, even though Brian won't be here next month, it will be Tim's turn. We will come back with a more concrete recommendation, and I'll ask Brian just to reach out and talk to some of our athletes and some of our coaches. And I know that I had a superintendent's meeting today, and we're all discussing this. I mean, right now, I think it's, if I'm correct, Brian, Division I and Division III, mandated masks to play. Division II will be meeting shortly to decide on that mandate.
During play?
During play.
During.
Yeah, so a basketball player would be wearing their mask, a gymnast would be wearing his or her mask. So I think there's still some pieces that are out there, but I think the biggest thing to me is getting our athletes into that gym and at least get them to tryouts. And Brian's plan was the 14th through the 18th would be tryouts and a couple days of practice. Let everybody have the holidays with families, and then resume on the January 4th, whether we were remote or in person.
Andy, do you know if the other schools with whom, or maybe Brian, with whom we would likely be interacting are similarly going to allow their students to participate in athletics when they're remote, if they go fully remote?
I can't speak to that. We met, so our cluster, basically, at this point, we've kind of aligned ourselves with Milford, Sauhegan. Conval just came back on board for the winter season, which is fantastic. So that's kind of our core group of schools, and we met last week, and they're not, at least the ADs at that point, had not had any discussion about athletes going remote.
Because they are, at least I know Amherst and Milford are going to be remote for the first half of January at least.
And Milford, I think, is the 30th, actually, November 30th through the middle
Yeah,
of
but
January.
we don't interact with them until after the first, from what you're saying.
Correct, yep.
And what we're looking at, just on that topic, if Milford was our week one opponent, we'd play them that whole week in all our sports at, say, their place, and then week two, they would come to us. So the group of,
Yeah,
same
it's just
group of
an
athletes.
issue of whether you're coordinating policies about play during remote times. It's great for us to say we'll play when we're remote, but if they won't.
Right. And again, I
was just curious if that had come up yet, and apparently it's
No,
yet to be
we're
discussed.
pretty fortunate that the NHIAA has at least opened things up into this whole open tournament concept, right? So even if we miss a week, it doesn't hurt us one way or another, you know? We can continue to move forward, and everything still works at the end of the day, because everyone qualifies. There's, records are out the window, and all that kind of stuff doesn't count. Similar to what happened in the fall, where the last week of the football and soccer seasons, we actually weren't able to play those games. We were supposed to play Milford, and those games were canceled. So, and it didn't, we just kept plugging away. I think people are very appreciative just of the fact that we're able to participate and have a season and have something for these kids to, hold on to for their athletic careers and whatnot. So I think we're very fortunate in that way.
Okay.
That,
The last thing I have is just a comment, and that is that I see how the logic you've used as far as deciding who you were recommending be remote and who not. From all the understanding that I get, and the medical experts can certainly address this better, but the greatest risk is person to person as opposed to person to facility. And I think from that standpoint, when you've got multiple people exerting themselves, they're all kind of equivalent. So in my mind, it's kind of an all or none thing. If athletes are going to be sufficiently protected to minimize the risk during play, I would think that would carry for all athletics if they have similar protocols during the play. I think it's great that you're going to clean things and stuff, and I certainly understand in something like gymnastics where there's a facility that's completely out of your control, but in general, the difference between basketball and wrestling, being a basketball player, I know that you're sweating and you're breathing and you're in contact. I don't discriminate between those. So if you think that you can manage it in one, then I suspect you can manage it in the other. Or conversely, if you don't think you can manage it in one, I'd question whether you can manage it in the other.
Okay.
And I just think you've put together a great list and done a great amount of work, which is awesome. I definitely kind of echo what Liz says. I'm not so sure we can require people to be remote, but I think we can highly recommend. I think that parents and students need to take a look at what their risk level is and what they're being involved in, and I think we're all doing that and measuring that, and I hope that families will consider that and maybe just voluntarily say, but I actually disagree a little bit with Tom, because I think that there are a few sports on here, specifically the one that I'm most interested in, that I really don't see the need for a skier to be remote, or even,
Sure.
Some of them like bowling, or, I don't see this. I think there is different levels of risks associated with different sports, and you've chosen the higher risk ones, if you will, to consider recommending remote too. And I think that makes some sense to differentiate between them. So, any
I
other
have
comments?
one question and one comment. We're not allowing any other outside group in our buildings for any of these sports.
Nope, per the original plan to reopen.
Yeah, all right, well, just my first, just to double check, just a reminder that we're not letting it. And then I guess, I don't know, this is maybe just an observation, a comment, a wish. And you mentioned Beth mentioned sort of like the season's gonna be later and shorter and everything. I know we've got an awesome trainer, and I'm wondering if he could do some things that could be done, broadcast via Zoom, maybe recorded things that are training flexibility. I would call them student safety. As you well know, I lived through an ACL tear in my house, and those are the kinds of things that I worry about when kids are going to be idle more than normal. Those are when kids get hurt. So it's all nice and good that they're going to stay safe from COVID, maybe during that long break, but I don't want them to get out of shape and get injured when they come back, because they're gonna come back and they're gonna play as hard as they can possibly play. So if we can just use our resources, and we have an awesome resource, and I think he would be more than happy to try to
Absolutely.
make some things available to our kids. So that's just my comment.
Yeah, we can definitely make that happen, thanks.
Thanks so much. Any other comments on
It's
sports?
one last teeny tiny comment. Just the eligibility to play, like the eligibility, we talked about the impact testing and waiving that for an additional year.
Yep.
And just a statement, I think that's fine. I just wish there was some way to make sure that a student has not had any kind of concussion or head injury since the last one before you're waiving it. That's all.
Okay.
Just, just
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
baseline, just that they've had, because we do have students that play impact sports, in different various seasons, and just to make sure there's been no changes to their status, but
Thank
that's
you.
all. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Matt. So at this point, I'm going to move to the public hearing, and then we'll come back to the rest of the principal's report. I need a motion to recess until the conclusion of the public hearing.
So moved.
Moved by Liz, seconded by Tom. All those in favor? It's 7-0, and it is now 6:45. Well, see, now we're 20 minutes late. 6:45.
That's permissible, though.
I know, it's permissible to be late.
It's all Brian's fault.
Sorry.
No, Brian, it's great.
10 minutes.
I
10
know.
minutes, man, 10 minutes, okay. Hold on, let me get the
Coaches
public
do
hearing.
that at winter sports.
Yeah. I only went 10 minutes, right?
So I need to read this one.
Yep.
Okay, so at this point, I'd like to call the Hollis Brookline School Board's November 18th public hearing to order. So this public hearing is related to fiscal year 21 unanticipated revenue associated with the CARES Act and any other local, state, or federal sources. In accordance with RSA 198:20-B, Assistant Superintendent Bergsock provided the board and viewing audience with information regarding the request. You want me to read this now? Yes.
No.
No. Okay,
That-
so
You did the preamble perfect.
I did the preamble perfect?
Yeah,
Okay,
we're
great.
good.
So Gina.
That's me. Okay, so essentially, different sources of funding have been available. And just as every year on the warrant, we identify that boilerplate article that discusses whether or not the people will allow us to accept funds for excess costs for special ed. So without that permission, we can't accept those funds. Additional funds have become available to us this year, COVID-related, and we need to obtain permission to accept and expend those funds. So specifically, we received $5,000 in a remote learning grant, but we need permission to expend it. We received about $20,000 in CARES Act funding, and we need permission to expend those funds. More recently, we have been allocated $200 per student based on the October 2019 enrollment data, so that's roughly $240,000 for the co-op. We need permission to expend those funds. And if our costs between March and December 30th of 2020 exceed all of those funding sources, including any monies we may have received from the town, then we have an additional $10 million that we can apply for on December 1st if we demonstrate that we have that need. But once again, we need permission to expend those funds. My assumption is there potentially will be additional funding sources made available to us in 2020 prior to the end of the fiscal year. So this would cover all funds that are presented to us between March of 2020 and June 30th of 2021. Kelly has done a really nice job of anything COVID related, identifying personnel and stuff, PPE, et cetera. What would happen with specifically the $200 per student that we've received, we don't have to apply for it. It's already been allocated just based on our numbers, which benefits us because, as you can see, our other funding sources were quite lower because we don't qualify with the typical kind of funding formulas. However, we don't have to apply for it, but between December 30th and the next 5 years, we must keep available a list with backup of everything that we spent that money on. So we could be audited at any time, and we must have that available. But as I said, Kelly's been keeping records for everything, and we believe we will be able to spend those funds quite easily and potentially apply for the additional, a portion of the additional $10 million that would be available to New Hampshire schools. The $200 per student, let me just say that it must be spent and completed by December 30th, 2020. So if we hired additional personnel, those additional guaranteed substitutes, only the portion of their salary that leads up to December 30th can be allocated towards this money. So those are the funds we're
So I don't
discussing.
need to read these paragraphs?
No.
Okay.
No.
So I am going to open the floor for public comment, and it is now 6:50, exact time. 6:50.
Yep.
Is there any public comment? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to close the floor for public comment, and I'm going, need a motion to close the public hearing. Moved by Tom, seconded by Beth. All in favor? 7-0, and we're closing at 6:50. Okay, great. Now, we need to come out of recess. Do I need to make a motion to do that? No, right? We
Nope.
just come out of recess?
Correct.
Right, thank you. We don't have to, okay, great. So, we're back in to our regular meeting, and at this point, I'd like to finish the principal's report. I think, Brian, that does fall on you a little bit.
Yep. So Mr. Garzone provided me with some notes here that he just wanted to highlight from his middle school report. HBMS was happy to celebrate Veterans Day with a virtual ceremony that included a principal's welcome, a musical performance by our chorus students, presentations from some of our local vets, as well as some student dedications to family members who have served. The presentation was viewed by all students during ROC. And parent-teacher conferences at the middle school will be held as Zoom meetings over the course of 2 evenings on Thursday, December 3rd, and Tuesday, December 8th. In line with the teaming model at the middle school and similar to the open house format, teachers will be meeting with parents by team. Parents who would like to meet with their child's teachers but are unable to schedule a meeting on these dedicated dates for any reason can always schedule a meeting with their child's teachers during team CPT.
Is that Tim's
And
report?
That was, yep.
I just want to make one comment. I'd like to congratulate 8th grade student Daniel Geller for his excellence at the VFW Patriots Pen contest. Any other comments on Tim's report? Okay. On to the principal of the high school, Mr. Barnes.
So he actually provided me with a couple things to highlight as well. The program of studies, which is going to be a topic I believe that's going to be discussed.
It's not on the agenda for discussion, but it is part of the principal's report, so yes, we'll probably have some discussion, but Rick is not here to answer questions, and we're not expecting you to be able to answer a bunch of questions on that.
I
So,
can do my best.
we will kind of, we have a few things to discuss about how he wants to approach program of studies. We'll probably focus on that tonight.
Okay, so he did ask me to just highlight that he's proposing that the board appoint some members to create a working group with administration that would meet offline to discuss and bring forward a final draft in December as far as the program of studies goes.
Because he doesn't like that meeting to last 4.5 hours?
I don't know.
Maybe.
I shouldn't be there because I go
Brian
over
is
my
just the
time.
messenger, just
Are
the
you just, I
messenger.
think you're gonna assign the people to that group.
Go ahead, Brian.
And he wanted me just to talk about the top 10 follow-up data in response to the request from the board to seek input from the class of 2022. The latest tally suggests that approximately 70% of juniors would like to see us move forward with replacing the top 10 with a Latin honors system beginning with their class. And I guess I'll do my best to answer any questions.
So, yeah. Yeah, is that pretty much the things he wanted you to highlight?
That was the gist of it, yep.
So, according to his board report, he has a different approach. He approached me on this. It's really something that I feel like the board should discuss if you, without spending too much time discussing it, but basically the idea would be that he would meet with 2 of us to discuss the changes that he has suggested that he and his team have put forth, whether also in this agenda packet, one of which was brought up in public comment. And then we would all come back together in December and have a little bit more clarity and maybe less time digging into the nitty-gritty, but have a little bit more information. And, I suggested to him that we all would be able to send, emails to those people who would be working with him so that we could get, sort of a little bit of a, little bit of input and get our questions answered so that he would know where to direct the discussion. It's kind of what he was thinking. Any thoughts on that, friends, board members?
Are we going to discuss the program of studies?
Well, first, can we talk about how we want to approach the program of studies, and then we'll talk about the program of studies suggestions.
I'd be happy to, well, I'm very interested and be happy and can help bring
Right.
feedback, but I think that sounds good to have some folks,
Right,
offline
work on
discussion,
it
and then
offline.
in December.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
I'm usually the reason that meeting lasts 4 hours. so.
Yeah, that's my problem, is I feel like everybody's going to want to be the two people in the room. Go ahead, Kate, Tom?
I don't care about being the two people in the room, I just would like to give my input.
Right, gotcha.
Fair.
Happy to do it, but also happy to step back, but I do think makes perfect sense to meet and then bring back.
Okay.
Well, I think by doing it that way, it also kind of forces, like, if we can publish deadlines of when conversations are going to occur.
It's really going to be just this month, like, I think it's by December, so it's only going to be a couple
But
times,
I think
right?
we can get specific feedback from folks, so like, if you're not the person at the table, it doesn't mean you don't get.
Right, send an email with your questions or comments, yeah.
Is it expected that in December it will be presented and voted on?
It looks like that's the deadline we're up against, yes.
Is there any concern about the public not having a chance to digest it, or do you know when?
I
when
have
the
a
proposals
little
are?
concern about that, but I think what is on the table has been presented this month.
I guess I would say if there's something different than what we've seen in this agenda, that it needs to be out well before the meeting so it can
Okay.
get public exposure.
Okay.
And Holly, I think it said, I was curious too, because Rick's, if I'm quoting him right, or, paraphrasing, that in order to keep everything on task, it does need to be done in December. But if there were major changes or something,
Right.
I don't want to see it pushed, but it sounds like we could, it would have an impact directly on that, so, but it's not impossible if it was the right thing to do.
My sense was, in conversation with him, that it would basically be a conversation about these items that he's already brought up. Like, this is what's been put on the table, if you will. Like, and then it would be up to the members who are workshopping it to really dig in and understand more, and then communication between other members to kind of let those members know what their feeling is on that, and then coming back in December. I didn't get the sense it was like, let's open up the whole program of studies and we're going to talk about, an art class. Like, that's not the sense that I got. It was more that.
Well,
Does
it
anybody
had a
else?
pretty major rewrite, was it 2 years ago?
Yeah. Right.
When
Could somebody else help me?
Amanda dug in very, very deep.
Right.
And pulled out a lot of the things that were inconsistent or, it needed a major rework, and we did a major rework. So I don't feel that we're talking about a major rehaul at this point. We are probably talking about
Just
looking at
these-
some
these-
discrete items.
Gina, did you have something to
I
add?
just wanted to add to that, I mean, these are the only proposed changes, everything else is good to go.
Right.
As it stands, unless this brings up another item that wasn't identified here, but it was just redone and everything.
So I'm getting the sense from the board that it's okay to move forward with that strategy of dealing with the program of studies for this particular year. So with that being said, we all got to see a program of studies changes walk through. If there's anything that's glaring at a person now, would be an opportunity to kind of say something. This is the question. This is now Krista's time to talk about the program of
Now
studies.
I can-
Yes, now.
I didn't know if you wanted to say it in public, you wanted me to say it. to
No,
the
no,
people
it's
doing
fine.
it.
I mean, I think it's good for the public to hear that if there's something that, you're seeing that you're not comfortable with, or you don't like, or you are comfortable with.
I am struggling with the science. I'm not a fan of lowering our standards. And I also am a strong believer in that public education should give children a taste of everything and give them a basis for everything. And I think chemistry is an extremely important part of that. And if we find that our chemistry is too difficult, then I think maybe we need to analyze that and look at it, because we do have honors, we do have AP. But I think that chemistry should have, all kids should have access to that and be required to take it, because I think it's an important part of life. It's not just, to me, it's not just something that you're going to study chemistry in college, I think I'm not a great chemist, but it has come in handy in my life and just my everyday life. So I can't say that I, at this point, would be a big supporter of that. That's what stuck out with me so far.
So I'm going to echo it, but I'm married to a PhD chemist, but I will tell, and we all know that I can't add, and I'm a language arts person. But the advice that I got when I was about a freshman in high school from a lawyer friend of mine was to take chemistry in high school, because chemistry is a logic class. And what you're going to need to do well in high school and college and a career like law that's going to require logic is going to be taught in the fundamentals of a chemistry class. So if it's the way we're teaching honors chem, if it's the way we're teaching AP chem, if it's the way we're teaching some of those classes, is making it unaccessible to kids who are typically bright students in the language arts, then we need to relook at our curriculum. But I mean, I echo what Krista said. It was foundational, and I loved chemistry.
Wow.
In high
Good
school,
for you.
loved it, favorite class, and off of my chemistry class, tested out of a college level chemistry class.
Great.
So I learned it, and I do think it's a logic class and it's a foundation, and I think it's okay for kids to fail. So if the concern is that it's a difficult course and a stumbling block, if those are code for smart kids get B's and C's in chemistry, then they still need to take that class, because it's okay to get B's and C's in high school. It is about being exposed and becoming a well-rounded student. It's not about making straight A's.
I do want to clarify, he does bring up chemistry, but we don't require chemistry. We require 3 sciences. So the third science doesn't have to be chemistry. It's just that right now it's a physical, I guess it does say 1 physical science, 1 biological science, and 1 additional credit, right? So, and physical science is the first class that they can take when they,
That's usually a freshman level class.
Right,
unless they
freshman level, and
pass.
So
it doesn't have to be chemistry, sorry. It doesn't have to be chemistry. I just want to clarify that, but it is chemistry that he did reference in this, in this walkthrough. Yes, Kate?
I mean, that was going to be my point as well. It doesn't have to be chemistry. There are other science options, but there is also chemistry and society, which is an option for those kids who maybe don't want the rigor of a full chemistry class because they know they're not going into a science-related field in their future, but still get a taste of chemistry on that chem and society level. So I guess I mean, I agree. I think it's really important for kids to take the 3 years of science, especially if they're college-bound. And I don't think that this inhibits them and makes them have to take chemistry.
I think in some ways the 3 years of science is a challenge for our students who aren't college-bound. For our students who are not interested in pursuing college, end up taking a 3rd year of science and are generally unhappy. It's not necessarily where they want to be. That's kind of my sense. I'm just throwing that out there, that not everyone in the school wants to go to college, and, you know, so is 3 years of science important for them, and Chris has already spoken to that, and so has Liz. So I don't have an opinion, I'm just
Right,
summary, yeah.
So just a different perspective. I was looking at it a little bit differently than I think everybody else has presented so far. Chemistry is hard. We all know that's hard. But if we're really struggling that much, looking at different approaches, how we approach different levels, different things, there's different ways that we can approach that. I don't look at changing this to a 2-year requirement as lowering a standard. I know that might sound strange, but I am the science kid. I took 5 years of science in 3 years. People don't know that. I went to high school for 3 years. I was dual enrolled in a college while I went to high school. And part of the reason I was so successful and my love for science, my love for this, environment was because I attended a high school that had lower requirements and allowed me to flex in a direction that it was a passion of mine. I have a student at the high school right now, and she wouldn't mind me saying this, she struggles with world languages and written things. That's not a strength for her, and it's a very huge benefit that we're allowed to flex. And so I don't look at it as lowering a standard at all. I look at it as encouraging and allowing students to kind of direct. And as Holly said, not all of our students are going to go to college, or they may go to very different types of colleges in liberal arts or in the sciences. So for me, I definitely, when I first saw it, that was my gut instinct, is like, oh, no, don't take science away. But that's not what this is saying. And I look at it as actually opening up opportunities for our students and not boxing them into something that might not be their passion or what they're going for. So it's just a thought.
One other thought I have about this, though, is this has been an area because the other kids, the ones that are the college-bound gunners, want to take a lot of science. And so we've had problems with class sizes on the science side. And I'm concerned that instead of adding the FTE we might be trying to fix a problem by reducing a requirement, or, you know, getting it where it's a more like-minded group in that class, and getting rid of the learners that are going to struggle a little bit more. But these kids need to be exposed to those concepts. I just don't want to make a decision that, because that is, I'm afraid it's going to get lost. That conversation that we've had when we've talked about class sizes and needs, I don't want it to get lost in this conversation. Sorry.
Cindy, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I mean, I agreed with Krista and Liz. I just think that it's a foundational, and I think that it's very important. There are kids who, you know, do medical assistant. They don't have to go to a four-year college, but for any kind of medical or background, this is really important, and I don't think that it should, and I kind of do look at it the same way as Krista, that it seems like we're lowering our standards.
Thank you. Cindy. Tom?
I have.
Can you put the mic down towards you a little bit, just because the mask is so...
Yep, I forgot. Thank you. I have a question about the computer science change. My recollection is the whole reason we brought in web design was to get them into coding, because we felt that coding was a content that we really needed. If we don't feel that we want coding in there, then let's look at it. But cybersecurity is a neat buzzword. I'm not sure how you teach that at a level for people who are not computer literate. I'm going to need to understand this a lot better before I approve of getting rid of what was the coding class that we brought in so that we have coding in our school. The other question I have is about limiting our CTE offerings to Nashua. It says focus. Does that mean that's what we're promoting, or does that mean that we're not going to send students to Milford or Alvern or the other places anymore?
If it was a student who was looking, say, for vet tech, that would still be in Alvern, because they're the only one that offers it. I think what Rick's looking at is there are courses that are offered both by Nashua and Milford, and from a transportation point of view, if we could make decisions regarding where we were going for that course. And I can't, you know, I can't give you a specific example, but it's just more, if we had, when I originally came on, we used to have an issue with automotive. We had a couple kids going to Nashua, a couple kids going to Milford, and a couple kids going to Messinic, because each one of those programs did it slightly different. You know, Messinic would let you work on your own car, Milford and Nashua wouldn't, you know? So we were spending large sums to get basically the same course going in three different directions. So I think what Rick is trying to do is say, we need to look at the offerings and designate which schools we're going to utilize for those offerings.
Okay, I would accept something that says that for a given offering, we have a location for it, but the way that this is worded, and I hope it, I would like it to be, I'd like the courses to be promoted, not the locations to be promoted.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Any other responses to the questions about the computer class? Do we have any information on that, Angie or Gina? This is cyber, okay. So I will reach out after tonight's meeting and see who wants to be involved in working with Rick over the next couple of weeks before the December meeting. And I would encourage, once we figure out who that's going to be, I would encourage anyone to put into words via email their feelings and things that they said today. I also know that Rick will most likely get the minutes and get the information and the feedback that we gave today. So before we move off of principal reports, I'd like to ask Annie and Jess if there's anything they'd like to add from student council.
Yeah, so in student council, we've been kind of talking about policy ideas for this upcoming school year. And we thought about having an open campus, but we talked to Mr. Barnes about that, and there's definitely a lot of planning involved before we can actually like get that set. And then another idea we had was implementing a virtual sign-out sheet for underclassmen on Wednesdays and Thursdays so that they don't need to all crowd in the back of the school to leave, because that obviously isn't very COVID friendly. And then, I know we mentioned this earlier, but the junior class decided that they would like to begin their new class ranking system. And when they sent out the survey, 90 students gave their input, and 80% of the students voted that they want the Latin honor system.
And then also the student activities section of student council is currently planning to pick an activity that will raise money and awareness for a charity in the HB community. We have a few ideas on what the activity would be, but nothing's decided on that yet. And then we also haven't decided a charity, but 50% of the proceeds would go towards the charity and 50% would go towards Grand Council for things like money for students who can't afford yearbooks, stuff like that. And then the senior class also decided on having prom at Beaverbrook this year, mostly because of financing, but also because Beaverbrook has a lot of nostalgia for a lot of students. So that should work out well.
Thank you so much for that update. Lovely. Are there any questions for our students? Okay,
No.
thank you. No, it's great, though, thank you. You don't have to stay for the remainder of the meeting, we appreciate it. Use the restroom. Can you just run
And is
the
that when we
budget
lost our
committee?
deposit
Can you
that
just
we rolled
take
forward
over
at
from
the
that?
other?
All right, I'm gonna hand it over to Tom for a second, I just have to
ask.
step away.
Yeah, I'll have to ask Rick. Yep,
It's gone,
yep.
unless we can roll it forward one more year.
Liz, what are you covering?
What am I covering?
No, what was the discussion? I didn't,
The question was asked, did we lose the prom deposit from last year
Oh.
if we're moving to Beaver Brook? And I said I would have to ask Rick.
Yeah, so last year they had already paid their deposit.
Oh,
Aaron's
and it was
senior
gonna
class had
roll
paid their
over?
deposit, and the venue was allowing them to roll it over for this year's senior class. This year's senior class is elected to have it at Beaverbrook, not at, was it the
Gotcha.
Radisson? Where were we supposed to have it, Krista? I don't even,
The,
the,
over the old Holiday Inn Crowd Plaza.
anyway, so my question is, did they let us kick our money forward again, or did we lose it?
yep,
It's
okay.
not that big a deal, it's just
No, that's
curious.
fine. Looking for the budget committee update. Is that Cindy or?
Well, I was going to take it because I'm combining two things. In your packet, you had round 1 and 2 of the co-op budget. Kelly and I have been working with Darlene and members of the budget committee. We are actually finalizing round 3, which you don't have. We met with Rick and Tim the other day, and the one that will go to the budget committee at their next meeting will be updated from this one. But I just wanted to highlight some areas. In terms of personnel, we do have a need for an additional case manager based on staffing. That has been in both rounds 1 and 2. The town of Hollis applied for and received a grant to get a second community officer for the schools. That officer would be going to the primary schools, so we'd have an officer that would be working with HPS and Hughes, and then Officer Bergeron would stay middle school and high school. He had been giving 20% of his time down to the Hollis. That means the placeholder that's in the Hollis budget for their portion would be allocated to that, and the co-op would pick back up the other portion of his contract when he moved down. So that is a placeholder of $30,000 right now. Chief Obecki and I have been meeting to go over the grants and the dollars, and we'll be able to refine that further in the coming months.
Is that something that we had wanted? Or is it just something that that we need to accept because that's how they're willing to staff us?
There is definitely a need for the SRO, and we find that, you know, he spends and is budgeted as well to spend some time down at the elementary schools, so it would be to our advantage to have him 1.0, 100% in the co-op.
Right. We are asking for $500 for a wellness policy coordinator. The state has really beefed up the wellness policy. There are many things that have to be complied with, so we're looking to do that by district. We are discussing and proposing 3 shared positions. I will be honest with you, right, this year, we are looking really to try to get the SAU-directed facility sub. In other words, a custodian that we can assign to any building when the need arises. I believe because of the where other budgets are, not necessarily the co-op, other budgets, the directed food service sub and the directed instructional sub will probably not make it to the 4th round or the 3rd round. It's going to be eliminated. We, as you may recall, added the SAU directed nurse sub, and that has really been a savior in the midst of COVID, because when our nurses have been out, we've had a qualified person there. Jumping down.
Which is the one you think is going to stay?
The facilities directed sub.
Okay.
So, down to academics, we have money in there for AP psychology textbooks, Algebra 1 textbooks, anatomy and psychology textbooks, and lab table replacements. The lab table are original. We had a request for a soprano sax and a soundtrack equipment there. At the middle school, we had historically been funding a Shakespeare guest speaker through parent paid. Would like to move that into the budget. We have a placeholder in there right now for social studies textbooks for $24,000. I wouldn't be surprised to see that come out, because we're still waiting for the state of New Hampshire to finalize social studies standards. So we would like, obviously, the standards to be set before we buy the text. We had been told that they would be done for really last spring, and we sit here and we don't see much movement. So if that comes out, it's not because we don't need textbooks, it's simply because the science, social studies standards are not done. We are requesting grade 7 science textbooks, and then we'd do grade 8 next year. And a laser machine for maintenance contract. Take us through our academic pieces, and that laser machine is a warranty is expiring on our tech ed machine, so that would just extend that. Mike has done some wonderful things to elevate the whole tech ed program at the middle school. The new computers at the high school, what you have is phase 2 of the plan we brought forward last year, so nothing has changed. The budget committee has been very appreciative that we had a phased-in plan, and though it's an expensive dollar amount, it really will keep us on a very positive cycle. We have our regular replacements of staff laptops, projectors, the math staff laptops are due, and then the $34,200 for Chromebook. We're waiting right now because, as you can imagine, during COVID, some of our tech purchases are backlogged. So we have that in as a worst-case scenario. That number will most likely potentially go down once the new equipment comes in and we can reallocate everything to its proper places, but we wanted to have that there. And then 2 smart boards at the high school, and then we repeat the process for the middle school components, basically the same items: staff laptops, staff desktops, projectors, student desktops in the library, and then again, their worst-case scenario for Chromebooks. One of the things that we've discovered during remote learning is that with computers going home, there's a need for us to have a little better filtering software when students take the computers home. So we are looking at upgrading that software because we do envision continuing to use computers and allowing those to go home even in a post-pandemic environment. So that is something that Rich is recommending. We have a camera for security reasons at the turf field. Kelly is actually checking the balance left in the bond article, and we may purchase that through the bond, which was approved for field maintenance and upgrades. 2 EpiPens in the nurse's office at the middle school, and handheld radios for staff to increase communications capabilities. One of the things that we've seen with us moving our students outside more. That is something we've really thought has been a positive, whether it's for a lunch or a class. And we'd like to continue that again in post-pandemic. And these walkie-talkies would allow us to have instant communication with a staff member who might be out on a field or doing something on the property. We are proposing the ski team and the swim team, their training fees and their pool fees, and those would be offset by now us collecting athletic fees from those teams. So that it is a budget item, but it will be offset by the revenue generated there. One of the things that we had talked extensively about is a bond versus maintenance trust. We believe we only have 2 items potentially on this list that absolutely have to be done from a budget standpoint, or items that would need to go into the maintenance trust. And that would be the Phase 4 roof section for $35,000. And we'd really like to do the second phase of the road paving to keep that on place. There'll be some items that will remain in the facilities and maintenance. We do believe that a bond for maintenance is the right way to go, but we just don't think that right now is the right climate to do that in. And most of the items can be delayed till FY23, and that would allow Kelly and Lance time to get concrete numbers on the remaining sections of roof, the remaining paving, the other big-ticket items that we would have to do with potentially a para contract and a teacher's contract on the warrant. We just didn't feel that a bond, especially with the way finances are right now for many people, would be acceptable. So Rick, Tim, and I, and Kelly, and Gina, and Bob are working through all the other facilities requests, which includes some window upgrades, an outdoor storage shed. We are on Phase 4 of new tables for the NPR, security system alarms. We have in there a building systems evaluation. We may delay that to coincide with the bond, and that would be more starting to look at the middle school and the high school from an energy efficiency standard, and what can we do to maybe reduce those costs over time. The windows replacement Phase 2, definitely something that's needed, but we also believe we could probably most likely delay that to FY23 and make that part of the potential bond if that's the way the board decides to go. So when we finished round 2, we had an $894,352 increase, which was 3.79. When we add in all the different warrants, we were at $967,172 for 3.89 for a total increase. That does not represent either potential contracts. And I can tell you that Kelly has been working diligently, and we're going to see both those numbers come down with an ultimate goal to be somewhere, below 3% and hopefully closer to 2.5%. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
If you make those changes you described to the maintenance, just keeping primarily the roof and the paving?
Yep.
Does that lower what needs to be put into the maintenance trust?
Yes, it would. The maintenance trust would go from $200,000 last year, Tom, to about 110 or maybe 100, depending what's in the fund right now.
It just says it's still around 4.1. It still has it at 200, so I wonder if that's going to...
Correct. The 200 in maintenance trust, the next round or the fourth round, whichever one will come out, you'll see that go down almost in half.
The other question I have is around the computer equipment.
Yep.
I'm wondering why on the round 2 new computer equipment, the equipment is subject matter specific, because these are for students, aren't they?
Yes, and the reason they were subject matter specific is to make sure that the device could do what was needed in the classroom. If you remember last year, we ordered some specific...
No, I understand that, but is this so to use in the classroom and potentially go home?
We see them having the ability to go home at times. We do not see this as a one-to-one environment where they belong to the student to be home all the time.
Okay. I just, where it doesn't look like they're different pieces of equipment. They're all at the same price.
Yes.
I think it may be, it may raise questions that you don't need to raise. Rather than just say new equipment Chromebooks, replacement equipment Chromebooks. It's just a suggestion.
Yeah, I just, to kind of speak to that, when Rick proposed the 4-year tech plan, it was itemized, and so this just follows what was viewed last year, so that there's no question as to, the only change that has been made is the cart versus the permanent storage device, and that was just, space needs that we have identified this year in the classroom with needing to be separate and stuff. So that's the only change. But otherwise, this just mirrors what was originally proposed as part of like a 4-year plan.
Yeah, no, I understand. I just think in the context that we now see the value of the resource,
The one-to-one is almost
it's not,
valuable.
it may warrant a different breakout.
So we're, I'm sorry to interrupt. The extension of that is that we're buying basically 386 computers, which is about,
Half our student
for the high school, it's just about half. Do we not get a longer life out of those? Are we gonna be looking at buying half the students every other year? Is that?
Well, the Chromebook lasts you about 5 years. So what would happen is these social studies, biology and chemistry and world language, in 5 years, you would expect to see some sort of cost to purchase whatever is needed at that time. But those departments, and that's one of the reasons why we put it by departments, to get them all in a cycle. So that it, almost like the old textbook days, you knew you were gonna get a new textbook in 2 more years, 3 more years, whatever it may be.
I think that model's broken, though.
Well, I think
we
that,
approved
I don't
this
know that
model
we
2
followed
years
that
ago,
model
though.
very well for a long time. So I guess I'm still confused. I think this is the question
Well-
you asked. But like, so we give Johnny a Chromebook, is he gonna need a different device for
Well, before we
for
didn't give
science?
Donnie a Chromebook, we
No.
put it in the classroom, and when Donnie went to that class, he used it. When he left, he no longer used that.
Right.
We didn't have one-to-one. We had them in the classroom to be used for subject matter content.
And that was the plan that we approved before COVID.
Yep.
So we have a pool, when we went into the remote learning, we took our pool of computers and allocated them differently than they had originally been purposed. The question is, are we gonna revert back to them staying in the classrooms for subject matter content, or are we gonna stay with a model of sort of one-to-one? And I don't know that we need to decide. My question is, this budget presentation suggests a specific model, and I question whether we want to perpetuate that model in our budget presentation. That's my question.
The model
Your
of
question is,
device?
do we need?
The model of having the devices in the classrooms versus having a one-to-one approach. We dismissed the one-to-one approach a few years ago and went to this approach. And Tom's just questioning, maybe we should be thinking about a one-to-one approach.
Or at least
since
not,
we're not necessarily investing 100% in this model right away.
Yeah,
It's
I
just a
mean-
question. Yeah.
COVID aside.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of value to the model that we adopted. We have very specific devices for computer science, very specific devices for physics, and very specific devices for our engineering.
but a Chromebook's a Chromebook.
No, I understand, but what I'm saying is, so last year's purchase, dollar amount was roughly the same, but number of devices was much lower because it was much higher end products. Why I liked the model of identifying what is the curriculum and then what device do you need to have in order to access the curriculum. We don't have to have, a high-end device for all students because some are not going to be accessing engineering in that particular year or whatever. Obviously, we had to figure different things out, and good, bad, or whatever. This year's totally different. But I liked that because then we would have 25 laptops that worked really well for our engineering students, but they would work for all 5 sections of engineering with 25 devices. And all of these, and I understand, like, should we just call it 380 Chromebooks for other content areas? We could, but I'm not
Well,
trying
then
to
how are the kids who are remote accessing the science classes when they don't have the high-end laptops?
So when we first identified who needed, this is a really good story. When we first identified all the students who requested devices, we went student by student and identified their course load. And then we identified the best device to hand out to them. And, so when we were distributing at the high school, and then also in kindergarten, because there was an iPad for kindergarten and Chromebook for everyone else, we were not just handing out sign this, it was, Tom, this is special for you, but your brother gets this based on course load. So we went, we were very particular, and
Okay.
as a result, some students were lent a Chromebook and some were lent a very expensive machine, and it was based on what they needed to have access to our curriculum.
I don't think half of us understand the magnitude of the behind-the-scenes work that went into handing out equipment.
Yeah.
So, thank you for making that very clear, because I did not understand that. And thank you to whoever who did it, because that was quite the undertaking.
No, that's fine. Personally, I would rather see us have a pool of general purpose machines and a pool of specialty machines, but if this makes more sense to you or keep it, that's fine. Just be ready to go through this explanation over and over again. The other question I have is are any of these technology purchases, either the new or the replacements, potentially COVID qualified related?
So we did purchase quite a bit of, so some of our grants that we had already been approved for, they were expanded and we were allowed to purchase computers with them when we were not typically ever allowed to do that. So we did that. We bought a ton of extra Chromebooks. And then with our CARES Act funding, the $20,077, the plan is to purchase additional Chromebooks with those. Those were, so those might come off of some of these replacements, but the problem is we already have identified damaged machines, and I don't know the extent of the damage of all the machines until June 30th. And so if I only really need to buy 75 replacement Chromebooks because I was able to purchase additional ones through grant funds, then I'm only going to purchase what I need, but I can't predict the need. So this is based on end of life, what I knew I was going to have to replace anyway, kind of additional funding set aside.
So I guess the short answer is no.
The short answer is we can't utilize.
The short answer is we cannot
FY22.
legitimately say that these purchases are to support anything that's
Yeah,
being.
no, we can't, and we can't because they were already part of a presented plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, Liz?
The laser machine, the maintenance contract, is that a piece of equipment that is shared between tech ed and robotics?
I don't think robotics uses that piece of equipment.
Okay. And then I guess the philosophical issue, the maintenance, shifting from using the maintenance trust or allowing the maintenance trust to accumulate to a bond process, I think is going to be a difficult sales job to some folks in the town of Hollis. And I find that to be something that may be divisive. So I think we just need to make sure that we think that through.
Right, and I think the piece to me is there hasn't been enough discussion either way from a board point of view. To decide to jump into an FY22 bond, I think would be unfair. to say we're absolutely going there in FY '23. I think where I'm comfortable, because we have been successful with maintenance and staying pretty much current, that we can delay some items. The two items I don't think we should be delaying are that section of roof and the paving. But other than that, I'm okay with it. Yes, we need new windows at the middle school, but they're not, what I'll say, broken or falling out or things of that level. They're just not as energy efficient as we really would like to see them.
I'm not saying this is the night we need to have that conversation. I just think we need to be thinking about that, how that is going to play itself out someday.
I think it makes good sense to kind of postpone the concept of a bond to 2023, because right now I don't think either community has the appetite for taking on debt.
Right.
So I think everyone is feeling, I don't know how people are feeling, but I would
Uncertain.
guess that people are feeling pretty uncertain about the future, and, so I don't think going for a bond this year would make sense.
No, and I think the concept of doing things that are conservative and that need to be done, because we've always talked about there's certain things that you need to do now, because if we don't do them now, it's going to be that much more expensive to do them later. And just like we would take care of our own houses that way, that's how we need to take care of the
I think
schools.
that's a good approach for this year.
Yeah.
Whether we're using maintenance trust or going for a fund, whatever, we probably just need to be settling and only doing the things we really need to do. That's my feeling. Any other comments? Okay, moving on. Lost my agenda. That's okay. Just roll up. Sorry, I apologize. Diversity, equity, and inclusion update, is that where we are?
Yep. Tiffany? For those of you who don't know,
Just a question, was there anything, that was the budget, was anything from the budget committee? My understanding is they have a revised guidance from last month.
they had provided us with preliminary guidance. They had looked at the formula slightly differently, which resulted in a lower percentage. I think we originally came out with them asking us to get up to about 3.5%. And then they went back and looked at the formula again, and SAU recognizing the difficulties that are there. They've made some adjustments. I think the next round that we'll bring in will actually be below their preliminary guidance, and we'll still have a discussion, because as I told you, we still have potential around social studies textbooks and things like that may be coming out. So I think ultimately we're going to end up with a very good budget that can be supported both by the board and by the budget committee, but I think it's just going to take some typical legwork at this time of year.
So what is current
The
preliminary
current
guidance?
multiplier is 0.
Right.
The original multiplier was 0.8, and they took it down to 0, which only made us 95,000 or something like that off, but it sounds like Andy's adjusted that since then. The other thing that they're trying to decide about whether it will be an operating budget or not is the student athlete fees. If we move it to a revolving fund, it would probably be like what you were saying with the swim and ski. It's going to offset, but they're talking about moving that to a revolving fund instead of the trust. That's going to be a recommendation from them.
Right.
Andy had asked for relief from guidance for the GMR and NHRS, so they didn't feel that they needed they needed to do that. They thought that he could come up with a number based on where we were in round 2. So we meet tomorrow night.
Yeah. So there'll be a new proposal that'll go to the budget committee that's not in our packet. It'll go to the budget committee, and then next month we'll get that proposal here. With the board's permission, for those of you who don't know, Tiffany Tester has been on my superintendent's committee working on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we wanted to provide the board an update, and I selfishly get tired of talking once in a while. Plus, at the same time, I wanted people to hear from a community member who has volunteered their time. So I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany, and then we can answer any questions you may have. Thank you, Tiffany.
Yep. Thank you. So I wanted to update you on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Community Group that Andy put together. And the first thing, I believe Andy spoke to who is on the group in the past. meetings. It's a very diverse group that represents the varying opinions, thoughts, and ideas from the community. And we've met now 3 times. We meet every other Thursday. And so far in our meetings, anyone that's been involved in this kind of work knows that the path is not always straight and narrow. There's a lot of emotions involved. It's a lot of social emotional learning for adults. And we've had great meetings. We've shared stories. We've shared our purpose and why we all come to the work. We've also recognized in those first meetings a real need to clarify and define terms, the terms diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so what the committee has done so far is we have worked on defining those terms, and also we've continued the work on the resolution. And there's just 3 points that I wanted to share with the board regarding the work that this group is doing. And I think the first is probably the most important. The focus of this group, while action-oriented, and it's more about prioritizing consensus building among the community so that when there are proposals brought by Andy, we can be confident that they have some support and beneath them. So we're a community-based advisory group able to provide the superintendent with a diverse community perspective and guidance with clear limits as to what actions we can do. So this group has no intentions at all of doing any of the work, actually. So the work is about the schools and the faculty and all of the other constituents. But what we can do, it's obviously, it's not our job to give professional opinion or advice as to how to address diversity, equity, and inclusion. There are only 2 members in the group that have any extensive experience in education or in equity work in education. And so what we do have, though, is we have a diverse community perspective. So what we see possible, and our aim is providing a thoughtful pulse as to where our community is at and to propose possible next steps the district could engage in toward developing a student experience with regard to DEI that's vetted by a diverse community group. So that's really where we see our ability. We continue to work on the resolution that was brought forth in the beginning. I think it was back in the summer that had quite a community response. And the reason that we continue to work on that resolution, though we may not call it a resolution going forward, is that we see that as a statement that basically the community is saying, this is important work, this is important for student experience, and we want our schools and our district to engage in it. So we are continuing the work around that, but we also acknowledge the reason one of the boards, namely the Hollis board, was really looking for a timely presentation of that resolution. And what, in this update, what I said to them before is that we also acknowledge a need to present a document that it already has consensus among the group. And again, I want to stress that this is a very diverse group, and we're taking our time to build consensus. There's a saying in this work, go slow to go fast, so that's one of the things that is important to hear. The other thing I want to note on a positive is that the work that started since the presentation of that resolution by some community members has already had an unbelievable impact. I think the number one is that it gave voice to students. So there was a group of students that came forward to Mr. Barnes and expressed all sorts of, disclosed and expressed all sorts of information on their experiences. There's been talk among faculty. There's been some sort of impromptu professional development that teachers can choose to be a part of. So it's already had a really positive impact. So I think those are the things that I want to share. Our short-term goals, so in the next meeting, we hope to define these terms, which is harder than one might think with a group with such diverse ideas, and edit the resolution document, have that ready to present. And then we're also looking, Andy and I have met, and we're gonna work with the group to decide on a process going forward to look at some different categories within the district.
Thank
That's
you.
an update.
Thank you very much, Tiffany. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Sounds like it's a great process that's going through. Thank you for
Good.
volunteering. Okay, great. And at this point, we need to talk about the calendar, and I'm going to turn that over to you, Andy.
Yep. Each of you should have just a calendar, which is basically the school district calendar. I wanted to have a discussion tonight. I'm not looking for action. What we do is really governed by the plan that you adopted. So regarding decisions, we are trying to do them in a thoughtful, deliberative approach and giving community members as much time as possible. But we also had a practice run on Monday when we found out that 5 telephone poles had gone down between Hollis and Nashua, and our middle school and our upper school did not have primarily power, which also means no water. So in one district, we shifted to remote on the same schedule as all our remote students were doing. At the middle school here, Tim went with a delayed opening schedule, and we were able to gain a lot of feedback and a number of things from that. So we do know that our pivoting is getting more successful. We do totally understand and wish we had more time to give people notice, but I never expected on that Monday for my phone to be ringing at 4:30 with the Hollis Police telling me that Drury Lane was like a war zone. So what we're talking about tonight is a little bit about our calendar and how it relates to a potential pivot. Please understand that this discussion is not based on COVID numbers. We have outstanding COVID numbers. The last time I checked, we had 7 in Hollis and 6 in Brookline. So this is not about an overwhelming number of kids in our schools. It's not about a massive number of kids in quarantine. This is about what I have alluded to a few times, a potential staffing issue. Because we have Amherst, who has already decided they will be remote from the 4th through the 19th. Milford is November 30th through the 19th. Londonderry is November 30th through the 19th. Right now, Bedford and Goffstown and Salem are open. Nashua is 100% remote. Hudson is December through January 19th. Merrimack is meeting tomorrow night to discuss this same thing, and here we sit tonight. The problem with the other districts closing forces us into childcare issues. Some of our staff simply will not be able to come in person. And we don't have the subs or the staffing levels to simply plug the leak. Right now, there are some mornings where, for those who are not aware, there have been 2 occasions, to my knowledge, where Gina has gone over and been a substitute teacher to make sure that that building was staffed. I have spent mornings at the high school to help with staffing issues. So it goes very well for us, but we are on a very fine margin. And a staff member of our own getting quarantined, things like that, we believe we can deal with. But if, in the case of just using Amherst, that will probably affect 3 people in our elementary district who would not be able to potentially come in. We have staff members who live in Manchester, which Manchester is also making a decision. They announced the other day, November 30th through January 19th. So my intent is to notify parents and give them notice that I would like to see us arrive at December 18th. Come back the Monday after the holiday. We have talked with our staff, our principals have talked with families. We are not envisioning as much travel as we might have anticipated. For whatever reasons, a lot of people have downgraded their travel plans based on the numbers. So I think we'll be okay. I think we can staff it. But at the same time, depending what would happen as far as teaching staff, at any point during that time from October 30th through December 18th, we might have to pivot to remote. That would not be my goal. That's not my objective. When I look at the travel for the holiday season, the December 19th through January 3rd, we see an uptick in what parents have informed us. And parents have been great. You know, I know one of the concerns was parents wouldn't tell us. No, they have been really good about contacting principals and letting us know. And I compliment them because it's helped me make decisions. With that in mind, and the closing of the districts to remote learning, right now I'm looking at that Monday, January 4th through January 18th, for us potentially becoming remote learning. Bob Thompson is over discussing the same thing tonight with the Brookline Board. And then we have a December 2nd meeting with the Hollis Board. So obviously, I wouldn't be finalizing anything until after we were back from Thanksgiving. I totally respect the comments that I heard tonight by citizens, but when I look at our data and our protocols and those pieces, they are working. And if we were to see a change, I believe that we can successfully pivot and our students can go fully remote, basically like this Monday on a moment's notice, but we probably would be able to give them more time. So I'm not recommending or asking you to take action on anything tonight. I'm just telling you that right now, if I was to make a decision tonight, I would say that we would not have the staffing levels needed to be in-person learning from January 4th through January 18th. We would open our buildings, staff would be able to come in. I would have to have flexibility with staff to be able to deliver instruction, because some staff, because of the age of their children, don't have the flexibility of leaving them at home. We have considered options like, should we allow staff to bring children? That presents many, many issues. One, we start to commingle communities for spread, which is not a good thing. Two, it creates potential liability issues that I'm sure our insurance company would not like if somebody were to get hurt or have something happen. So we are examining everything, and Bob, Gina, Kelly, and I meet every Tuesday on an official basis, and probably meet every other day that goes by without discussing COVID. We monitor the numbers. This afternoon, Bob participated in the Health and Human Services call. I did the superintendent's call the other day. All of us have our own favorite websites with COVID data. But I think why I am confident that I believe we can do the November 30th through December 18th is our protocols. You know, our numbers are remaining at 80-20 split for in-person remote. We basically have 6 feet in every classroom. Our administrators are becoming very proficient in contact tracing, because I know the state is struggling. But we have been, since moment go, working with our administrators and doing a lot of it our own and notifying families. So that's my update on the calendar. The intent would be to come back January 19th. Am I worried if we go remote about coming back? Of course I am. You know, that's always a worry. But I think, again, because of our protocols and the success rate that we've had, it would take some new data on new pieces to make me rethink that decision. And as always, I would keep the board informed as we move forward. And I'm happy to take any questions or answer anything regarding my thought process or where we're at.
Any questions or comments? Beth, go ahead.
Well, you can go.
I just, to understand the calendar, right now, Thanksgiving week, there are no students in the school at all?
That's correct.
And also that
Those first
holiday
3
week,
days
the
of-
21st through that, there's no students?
That's
in the
correct.
school? Okay.
Yep. So when we come back from Thanksgiving, we would have 15 days. Now, what we have seen a little bit, in the 7 days when we get back, if things are going to rise, they traditionally will rise.
And we enter the Thanksgiving emptiness, I won't call it the holiday, but the emptiness this week, at the end
Correct.
of this week.
Yeah.
So the question I have is when, where all these towns are announcing their remote, when will you know whether you've got a staffing problem?
I will probably know by the end of this week, because it will have some final decisions by some districts whose boards are, we chose an approach where you voted on the plan and gave me the authority, and some districts did it that way. Other districts have approached it from board votes. So there are a couple superintendents who are waiting for their boards to vote.
So if you're gonna do it by a plan, your plan, you will know this week. Otherwise, it'll be because you hit a tipping point in the following period.
Right. So my thought process is I would give some form of communication this week to families saying, this is my plan. We would be open based on today's data from November 30th through December 18th. We would be remote from January 4th through the 19th based on staffing. If, because of data or cases in schools go up, I may have to change my decision on that December time period.
So in other words, you might have to make that earlier.
Correct.
And it's confusing. We are still remote December 21st and 22nd as well.
That's
So
correct.
it's important that we don't say from January 4th, because then that would lead
Yep.
to some confusion, as families would say, wait, what happened to the 21st and the
Yep.
22nd? So we would be remote from December 21st through January 19th, but the days that are non-student days would stay non-student days.
Correct.
Like the days off, like
Yes.
Christmas and Christmas,
Yep.
that whole week, including Martin Luther King Day, would still continue to be a day off.
Correct.
So, and so you're just kind of letting us know. And the potential to pivot between the 30th and the 18th is still there.
Yes.
It just could be a decision that's made kind of like the mayor of New York City did today. Like,
Yep.
tomorrow, we're going to be a remote.
Right.
So,
Right.
and if he can do it, he has millions of students, I think we're okay.
Yep.
Yes, Beth?
I think I understand your intent and everything about this well, so I don't have questions. I just wanted to voice complete support for it. I feel very strongly, based on numbers, based on the policies we have in place, and the extreme value to being in school when we can be. We don't know what's going to happen after the holiday. We don't know, there's a lot of unknowns, but what we do know is one foot in front of the other. We have a day and a half left of in-person right now before the holidays, and that would be incredibly difficult for parents and teachers, I would imagine, to come up with how to change their instructional plans and how you present it. It would be very difficult for my family, and I imagine a lot, to just all of a sudden we know that it could be that way, and we'll have to be flexible, but if we have the numbers and what we have now, I fully support it. I also would just like to point out for the December holidays, I think that a lot of people struggle between balancing decisions with family and COVID and safety, and this is doing 2 weeks post the Christmas, Hanukkah, everything, December holidays is almost a gift to our families and our staff and our students that, COVID's going to be here and it's not going away, but family isn't always going to be here. And this allows staff, families to travel or see people guilt-free, knowing that we all have a 2-week quarantine after while we remote learn. It's a safe thing to do. It's an important thing for emotional support. Families, I wholeheartedly support this. So thank you very much for all of the thoughts that went into this, because it's very well done.
The other piece I want to just mention to the board, they did change the travel requirements. So now the quarantine is 7 days, and then a test could be as soon as the 7th day, but it has to be the 7th day or beyond. So that will also assist some families and some staff members.
Yep, and just as long as it's a PCR and we're not symptomatic, that
Correct.
counts, yep.
And what I have learned is that, like, if I knew I was going away and returning, say, January 7th, I could call and schedule my test for the 7th day after I returned. So I don't have to sit there and drive down. I could say, okay, I got back on the 7th, 7 days out is the 14th, so I could make that appointment basically at any point. So families at home that are trying to maybe get, 4 or 5 people together, which is never easy, in my talking with the folks who are doing the testing, you can absolutely schedule in advance.
And it's highly recommended.
Yeah, oh, yes,
Did you
yeah.
have something? I feel like you wanted to say something.
I did, actually. I have no questions about the plan to pivot. I'm in support of it. I think it's great. But I had a calendar question in general, if that's okay, Andy. Right now, the last day of school, does that still include 5 snow days built in?
Yes.
It does, okay. And I know we had talked about this a little bit a few months ago, about what that meant to have a snow day if we know our schools can pivot and do a remote day. Has the decision been made that if there is a snow day and our kids are in school, if there will be a snow day, or if we will just go remote?
I have entered into discussions with our union presidents, and I think what I would say, and this is my opinion that they may or may not agree with, I'm hoping they'll agree to something to have another tool in my toolbox, because I do think there's a value of a snow day.
Me too.
But let's say we get through December and we've had X number of snow days. Well, nobody really wants to get out at the end of June. So what I would then do is you can start to prep families and teachers that, my goal is that the next snowstorm, provided we have power, will be a remote learning day. So everybody kind of has some advance notice. And when possible, sometimes in New England, we know we're going to get hit and hit hard. So we could make a call the night before, and then everybody has the ability to pivot there. And I think I would also want the snow day to potentially have some flexibility. I don't know if I would want it to be every class period has to meet just for me, because I'm also looking at talking to students, and this is taking a social emotional toll on students. So trying to balance, them being children and, waking up and being able to go back to sleep and those things, as opposed to waking up and having to immediately get on the computer. So I think
getting to go back to sleep.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if we do some sort of schedule, which again, we have not agreed upon anything with our unions, I will probably build in collaboration and PD time at the beginning of the day, so staff would start for a full day. But almost like the old delayed opening start, except that it would just be a remote format. And I probably will have more information in December, but if we had a storm in the next couple of weeks, it's going to be a traditional snow day, because I think those, especially our little ones, they need to go out, run outside and make a snowman and really enjoy that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think for all ages, I think snow days are really important. They're important for parents. I think they're important for kids, whether they're remote or in the classroom at this point. But I would love to see that worked out so that at the very least they're getting the 5 built-in days that we've got built in anyway.
Yep.
And then I can see certainly doing what you're talking about and kind of figuring out how to collaborate and ease it in. But that's awesome. Thank you.
I think the snow day topic has brought up.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you brought it up, because I can tell you, with every day I sub lately, I can promise you there's not been a day a student has not asked me that question, and I haven't gotten the question, you're on the school board, right?
Yeah.
Have we talked about snow days yet? And I said, not yet. But it's overwhelming response from students that in the middle school level and talking to, amongst others, they really value their snow days and how important it is. And just thinking back to when I was a child in snow days, I'm sure we all have a similar appreciation. Just moving here from faraway places that didn't get snow, that was the #1 thing on my kids' list, is I finally get snow days. So I've heard it from every age group in all 3 of our districts. It's overwhelming. So I'm so glad you brought that up, and it sounds like you're well.
We're working on it.
Thank you.
I have a question, but it may be borderlining on blasphemy. Do all 3 districts have to make the same decision?
On snow days?
With respect to
No.
The remote?
No, the only.
remote piece.
Technically, no. The piece why I would like them to make the same decision is because then we potentially, and, well, I wouldn't say that. Originally, I was thinking there would be some potential savings in buses, but if it was only going to be from January 4th through the 19th, I would recommend that we pay them because nobody can afford to lose a bus driver during this. So, so the answer would be no, it does not have to be the same.
So I'm just going to advocate for our co-op kids, because we had parents here who had littler ones, and I think the one was, 8th grade. I think the little ones are handling the remote piece possibly better than our teenagers, and they so need that social experience, and I am very, I had a conversation with a friend who has teenagers in the Manchester School District. She had 3 of her kids, friends, try to commit suicide within a 2-week period of time. So we can't sit here as a co-op board and think that the kids that we're responsible for are just like the primary school kids. And I just really feel that everything we can do to get these kids into the building should be tried. So if we don't have a staffing problem at the high school, let's bring the high school kids in, or let's try to do, and I hope that the teachers who are in our middle school and high school understand the very important charge that they've been given to help these kids through this pandemic. And these kids need those adults, and they need each other.
No, very well taken, and again, that's why I'm not in favor of doing the November 30th to December 18th. And, my feeling is that our staff has been tremendous, and we'll be able to open back up on the 19th unless, like I said, something changes regarding data and COVID.
But that's because something happened.
Right.
Right, exactly, right.
Monday something happened and we had to do it. But if we cannot do it, because right now our numbers are well controlled in this region.
Yeah.
And if we can bring the kids back safely, and we're not seeing community spread in the school, even the few instances we've had in this school or in the co-op, we've not had a cluster of infections. So it does not appear that there's any risk to bringing these kids and staff into the building.
So I get the sense from you and from everyone here that the planned pivot makes perfect sense given the circumstances surrounding us in terms of other districts making that decision, but that the continuing to keep our students in person from November 30th through December 18th also makes perfect sense. That's sort of the consensus and the general feeling I'm getting. Are there any other concerns? Because we are getting to 8:05 and I'm running behind.
Well, I guess I wouldn't mind us coming back to school on the 4th.
Oh, so Liz wouldn't mind us coming back to school on the 4th.
I mean, I really think that having the kids at home that month of January, right before they go into midterms, is going to be really tough.
Right, well, one thing I will tell you, because you just jogged my memory, we are having a discussion, we may decide not to do midterms based on student health and wellness.
Okay.
So, I mean, we haven't finalized that, but I want you to know that that's in discussion, and thank you very much for mentioning it, because I forgot.
Anything else? Anyone else? Okay, great. So we are going to move on to deliberations, and we have a little change in we made an agenda adjustment, and we're going to bring the deliberative items that we adjusted first. So we have to approve and accept the expenditures of the unanticipated revenue. So I need a motion to approve the acceptance and expenditure of fiscal year 2021 unanticipated revenue associated with the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, otherwise known as CARES Act, and any other local, state, or federal resource set forth in RSA 198:20-B. The board to be provided with a full accounting of the revenue amount and expenditures.
So moved.
So moved by Tom and seconded by Beth. Is there any discussion on this item? All in favor? 7-0. Motion carries. We also need to talk about we need to take an action regarding public school infrastructure facilities grant. So I need a motion to approve the acceptance and expenditure of the public school infrastructure facilities grant in the amount of $71,284, 80% of the total upper limit cost based on estimate provided in application for security cameras at the middle and high schools. The district portion of $17,821 was funded through budgeted district funding.
So moved.
Moved by Tom, seconded by Beth.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Or was it the other way around? I don't know.
Doesn't
It doesn't matter.
It was simultaneously motioned and seconded. Any discussion on this one?
No.
All those in favor? 7-0-0, motion carries. All right. Keep trying to do that thing where you spit on your fingers, which is totally gross now. That
You
has
will
been
never
over.
get to do that again.
I know. Okay, so now we're moving on to policy. I need to put on the floor policy IHAMA, teaching about alcohol, drugs, and tobacco. So I'm going to need a motion to accept the third reading and adopt policy IHAMA, teaching about alcohol, drugs, and tobacco as presented, because there was no real amendment to it. Anyone? So moved by Beth, seconded by Tom. Okay, so Tim isn't here. This was kind of his. We kind of break up the policy committee.
I think Brian wants to fill in for us.
Brian is zipping up his
I
bag.
told Brian to go home.
Oh, thank you. Brian,
That's
you
why
can
I
go
had to
home.
tease him.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Brian. I usually try to remember to do that, but I didn't. I just enjoy your company so much that I was
Brian, you did a
enjoying,
great job being everybody tonight.
So the only thing that we changed about this was we took the legal reference disclaimer off because that just kind of carries over. Tim, the last time, added some of the RSA references, and then we simply added third reading. So nothing about this policy has changed since the second reading, except for moving that disclaimer because we don't include those in our policies.
That had not been removed last time?
It had not been removed last time. So is there any discussion on this?
No.
Okay, all in favor? 7-0, motion carries. Okay, so that's adopted. Woohoo! Take that off the list. Okay, next one. Policy, we have to bring policy IKC class rank to the floor, so I need a motion to accept as third reading policy IKC as amended.
This is saying it's
Second.
second reading.
Yeah, I think this is.
I'm sorry, second reading.
So
So moved by Tom for second
Second.
reading, seconded by Beth. So this one we do need to discuss a little bit, because when we met in policy, we did not have the survey results. So we kept it at the beginning with the class of 2023. We added the sentence that you can see, academic achievement will be recognized at graduation as per the procedures outlined in the Hollis Brookline High School Program of Studies. That was not there when we first brought the class rank amendments to you because at first we didn't think it needed to be in policy, and then we decided that we wanted to have something in policy that showed that we were going to be recognizing academic achievement, but we don't want to be so specific in the policy as to what that procedure will be. So those procedures would be outlined in the Program of Studies. And just for the public's information, there's a committee working on this, and the concept is a Latin honors system. But we don't even want to put it in there because it might not actually technically be Latin honors. We might not call it magna and summa and cum. We may call it like yay and double yay and triple yay. Yes, exactly.
My kid got a triple yay.
Right. So, that being said, I don't mean to make light of it, but that we decided to add that in policy, and then we still have the exception for class rank regarding with the Service Academy application process. And the reason we still have this in there is because the policy committee really struggled with this decision. This is a really hard decision for us. We talked about, well, first of all, Rick and his team interviewed 4 of the service academies. I don't have Rick here, but
I actually have them, and the 5th one did respond.
the 5th one did respond.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Beth.
it was really split. I'm sorry to interrupt
No,
you on that.
it's
I just
fine.
happened to open it, and it's a Google Doc, so it's been updated since we saw it last.
Oh,
There's
okay.
actually all 5 responses. So he reached out to all 5 service academies, and at the time we had the Navy and the Army both saying that no, class rank was not needed. But we had the Air Force and the Coast Guard saying yes. I believe the Merchant Marines had not responded, but there now says a yes. So it's split, but we also talked about it really depended on who you asked within the academies. But that's where that's at. So it was pretty split between some of the service academy representatives saying yes, you need it, and some saying no, you do not.
And for further information, Rick did reach out to other area high schools that have gotten kids into service academies and don't report rank, and a couple of them reported that they do report the decile. So they'll tell the service academy that the person falls in the top 10% or the top 25%, but they still do not technically calculate or report rank. So we're kind of like, what do you guys think, and how do you feel about it, and what do you want to see? Some of us said we really should just pull the Band-Aid off, and it's really, why just for the service academies do we make this exception? Other people said, but it's the service academies. So did I summarize that pretty
Very well, yeah. That's it.
So I really do want input from the board members who are not on the policy committee, because we've all weighed in and we are like, yeah. Cindy?
Yeah, my opinion hasn't changed since the last meeting. I won't vote for this if that's in there. I just
Okay.
don't think that we should, it's like I said before, either black or white. I don't think there's a gray area in this, and I don't think the survey really helped. And I think that it really has to do with who you talk to on the phone at that moment.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
I'm fine with the language being there. I just don't ever want to handicap anybody who's willing to give their life for this country. Because that's what you're asking to do when you want to apply to the service academy.
It's a good point.
I didn't hear her.
Could you repeat it, Liz?
Probably not with the same words. I'm willing to leave the language in there because I just don't want to handicap a child who wants to apply to the service academy. I feel that a child who's willing to go to a service academy is willing to give their life for this country and their freedom, and I believe you support that.
Another question was raised, how many people say they're going to apply to a service academy just so they can get their rank and then maybe not follow through? And that has not happened historically. So this has not been abused. There are multiple steps in the process before it's released anyway. So
it's a pretty significant commitment to apply to the service academy.
Well, that's what we figured out. Like at first we questioned whether people would do that, but you really do have quite a big process, and there's also a waiver and a non-disclosure agreement that you have in policy. So it really does prevent that, and it is a different animal than applying to a university or a college.
I know it's not my kid, but my nephew went to the Naval Academy, and Aaron went through all the application process because he thought he wanted to do such a thing, and really did find the application process to be daunting and thought, I'm not sure I can do all of this. So there you go. I mean, it is not something that you're going to I just want to do it because I just want to see if I'm number 11.
Right. So is there anyone else with a strong sense? Kate?
No, my question is when we do release rank to service academies, are we actually giving it to them directly, or do the students get it? I mean, that's the other piece.
So the policy doesn't direct the procedure. So the procedure could be that it's just released directly to the service academy.
And there certainly are a number of things that do happen that way when kids are applying to any college. So.
Is that the right answer, right? The policy doesn't direct the procedure. So the procedure right now, I'm not 100% sure. I'm not in the guidance department. I don't know exactly how the procedure works now. But it certainly could be something that we, follow up with.
I will tell you that the application asks for it, so
the student needs to have.
You would have to find a way to to circumvent the student.
Right.
If you wanted to avoid that, it's not built into the process.
Sure.
But it sounds to me like that's possible because we do have districts in the area that get kids into service academies and aren't providing rank. So the student must be leaving that blank at some point. And
Yeah,
the other, and
Which
then,
would point to the fact that maybe it's not as black and white as they make you think it is.
right,
but-
right.
Or maybe even put an asterisk, will be provided by school. I
Yeah.
just sort of
But-
feel like, I remember Casey talking about this years ago when we looked at this policy, and I thought there was at that point, there was a procedure that guidance
I
was
think the sense
following.
too is that there's been a lot that's changed in terms of reporting of rank, and that we're hearing now 2 academies say, no, you don't need it, definitely not, and we're wondering what the future will be. That was another part of our conversation is, maybe we leave it in for another year and see where it goes. I mean, see what we need to do, and then revisit this in a year or 2.
One of the things is, they don't add, at least when this was added, they didn't ask for class rank. They asked to confirm that the student was in the top 15%.
The decile.
So, since we didn't explicitly state anything above top 10, we instead gave the number so that it could be calculated. So there is the option of saying that that the school will provide information to the service academies if required. And, and the information that they require may not be class rank. It may just be, did this person graduate in the top upper quarter? But they don't, at least when the case was brought before the board, the statement made to us was not that class rank specifically was needed. It was that the information was needed to allow them to answer the question about class standing.
Okay, so that's interesting, and we didn't have that information,
Yeah.
so we could probably rephrase this. I guess, what's the appetite here? The policy committee needs direction. This is second reading, we're gonna go to third. We just need direction from the board. I'm getting the
You ready
sense that we
for
have,
a dialogue?
I could buy into this language that Tom's trying to create, that basically we supply the information required by the.
Application.
Service
Is
academies.
it that simple?
Yeah.
I mean, if it's a service academy, well, yeah.
Yeah.
so
And
the
then
appetite
it's gonna
for
get rid of
the
the
policy
gender-specific
with
terms.
some sort of language related to service academy, Cindy, I guess Cindy, you're the only person who said, like, this won't fly the way it's written now, right?
Right.
So if there was a change in that language, would that be like a change to kind of lean, so it's not that we're reporting rank to the service academy, that we're giving information, would that help?
I'd have to see the language, but
Okay.
that, because, I mean,
Colleen,
it says
I
rank,
just
so
wanna-
that, which we don't rank. So
Right.
those,
So I just wanna
that
move
word
on from
definitely
this, too. I
changes
don't
the
wanna be here all
policy.
night, so.
Yeah, no, I'm fine to move on too. I just want to make it clear, I'm in the same boat as Cindy. I don't support it as right. I would rather see it come out. I don't want to leave it on for a year or 2 and then revisit because it's a lot of work to go through
Right,
policy
right,
and
yeah.
it's a lot
Well,
of
we have
time.
enough policies
We
to
have
go
enough
through.
policies. I really believe that this is moving in that direction, the world, the academies, everything, the military.
Okay.
I would rather see it out.
So I've got 2 people who would rather see it out. Tom?
Okay, I have that and something else that I want to change.
Okay, so can we just focus on the service
Is that-
academy piece first and then?
I am opposed to the language as it's stated, making an exception. I would support a clause that gives the administration the
Flexibility.
ability to work with a student applying to the service academy to give some information that may assist their application. But we're not going to calculate rank and we're not going to report rank.
Okay.
I think that's the
All
position.
right, so that's where you guys are. All right, anyone else have a firm stance on this thing?
I want to be able to provide students with what they need to be successful, even if that, their success is going into an academy. I would love to see the language changed.
So change the language. Got it.
I
Okay.
mean, we were saying, like, our intention originally with getting rid of rank was so that we didn't harm kids, because we were harming kids. I don't want to harm kids by completely not allowing opportunities for
You
kids.
see,
So
we're
that's something
split on
that
this.
we were.
So why don't, we'll take it back to policy, we'll work a little bit on that language to Tom's point, to make it more palatable, and then hopefully we'll come to it, and we've got, my goal here is to get
Get it done.
To get it done, because I really, really don't like us announcing the top 10, and I'm just gonna put that out there, but it's also was the sense of all the committee work that we did, was to get rid of announcing the top 10. So that's my first step here, and then, okay, and then Tom, you have some other comments?
Yeah, I am strongly in favor of changing the date or the class to begin with the class of 2022. And I wrote some things down just so I don't mean this to be a speech, but
It's okay, make a speech.
the practice of awarding top 10 recognition is about much more than just the recognition. The impact of our current practice is unintentionally harming and limiting our students. Some of the unintended consequences of limiting the recognition to 10 students identified to the committee by the students and the staff, this wasn't the board people bringing it up, include encouraging cheating through sharing of work when students are afraid to be less than perfect due to the impact of their GPA, and thereby undermining the learning process. For instance, someone who's didn't get to do their homework, or someone who has concerns about something, it's common practice to get it from somebody else because it's graded. Now, it's not traditionally what you think of as cheating, but the fact is it keeps them from necessarily doing the work themselves, even if it was going to be late or something. It has that impact. That students are sick to delay testing until they can find out what was on the test. Choosing classes based on GPA value instead of the importance of the subject matter to the student. Increased anxiety from fear of failure at the prospect of not meeting the threshold for top 10. Lost opportunity for recognition among those students who are mathematically eliminated from the top 10 due to a single bad course or course selection. The proposed change does not remove recognition of or incentivizing of achieving excellence. It amplifies this by removing the artificial limit on how many can achieve excellence. This does not become a participation trophy. We're not saying that everyone gets one because you're all good. The standards do not need to be compromised or lowered. It will eliminate the desperate efforts to beat out the other person by the thousandth of a GPA point, which is really where we are. This is what's going on. We were told they start calculating their GPA freshman year so that everybody knows. And by sophomore year, some kids know, I can't make top 10 because I got a B. And why do you demoralize a kid for that? But the other thing is it also provides a good foundation for ongoing work on the grading and assessment. It'll allow recognition of exceptional achievement in the full range of studies in which our students excel, not just the narrow ones that are currently structured within our current system. And we thought it was 70 today. The student council reported 80% of the reporting students in the class of 2022 would like it gone. And we all got the letter that says, that's not a big majority. Well, that's a landslide. We're not hurting the kids who are already benefiting from top 10 by changing it, but we are harming kids by not changing it. And I think if the student population is asking to have it done, we should be honoring that request. Thanks for the podium.
Can I just add to the conversation about program of studies? In addition to the items identified by Principal Barnes, that committee would have to identify some language for the program of studies.
Yeah, since we put that in policy, we would need that in the program of studies for next year, yeah.
It would have to be in place now. If we were to change to class of 2022, then it would have to be added for December, which is fine, but we just need to make sure it's added to the document.
Or could we have an asterisk in the program of studies? Right, like to be amended in January? Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
we can still, we
Yeah.
can have the vote in December.
Yes, we can have the vote. So, Tom, I completely agree with you, and I'm good with that. I would think that starting it with the class of 2022, I especially think it's important for the public who, this is second reading, to understand that in policy committee, there's a good chance that this comes back with 2022 on it, because of the, because not just the student survey, but all the points you just made about the fact that this is really what's good for kids. And when I first thought about it, I thought about it from the perspective of those top 10 students, but there's 10 of them. You know, it's the other 180 students or 190 students who are responding and saying, well, there's 90 of them, responding and saying, Latin honors sounds good. So I think that's an interesting perspective. Anyone else going to guide the policy committee on this? All right, so it's going to come back probably with some language changes. I need a vote, I think. Did we vote?
Yep.
We didn't. No, we put it on the floor. I don't need I need a vote.
Yep.
Did we need a vote? Okay. So all in favor of second reading? Any opposed? Liz, did you raise your hand?
No.
Are you abstaining from the second reading? No, you just tell me what your vote is. Aye, nay, or abstention. It's really.
I'll abstain. I don't want to change the class.
Okay, all right, 6-0.
Well, second reading doesn't
And in
have
fact-
a change.
Yeah.
Second reading doesn't have a
Alright.
change.
Right.
My
We were
vote
just
of
taking we'll
protest.
change that for the next reading. Okay. What?
I don't know.
It's okay, you can be an abstention, it's fine.
Yeah, and I think, but my point, I think, is going to be, and maybe I'm having a hard time with this, because there are 10 or 15 kids that are fighting for that top 10 or 15 spots, and they just got outvoted by kids who can't get into those 15 spots. And so I'm not sure I'm buying the logic.
You don't know that,
the
though,
survey
Liz.
wins.
You don't know that the people who are vying for it voted against the change, because in the committee, some of the student input we got was from kids who were in it, who were saying they wished it was different.
All right, I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. I don't want to justify it by that survey.
Okay.
If we're gonna make a decision, let's base it on something that is based upon some science data.
Okay.
Because that survey to me is just like, they're always going to get outvoted.
So I think we're gonna bring it back to policy, and we'll talk about it, and we'll come back.
So is that 601?
That was 6:01, yes.
Okay, just want to make sure I have the
I
right.
think you're still an abstention, right?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Just want to make sure I have the right one.
Not great that you're abstention, but great we can move on. Okay.
I'm trying.
So, and then next, we need to talk about policy GADA. I need a motion to accept for third reading and adopt policy GADA, employment references and verification as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Beth,
Oh, sorry. I was slow that
I'm
time,
offering
sorry.
it to you.
seconded by Tom.
Thank you.
There, I just call it as I see it, sort of. It's on the peripheral vision, so I don't see it very well. So Beth, this was yours, if you want to touch.
Yes, really no updates except we took, I believe it was Tom's advice and put some oars in there. And I hope I got them in the right spot. But if you want to take a peek, and nothing's different otherwise from the previous. We just took out the double applies if or doesn't apply. It's now, this is how it would look for final reading with the oars in there. Oh, I did, yeah.
So
This-
if there's no further discussion on that, can we vote? All in
I'm
favor?
so sorry.
Sorry, Beth.
I'm so sorry. We focused so much on that part. The he, she, do we leave that or do we put there? That never even came up, except I'm looking out right now and seeing that.
What are you asking?
In the first, or the second little paragraph there, employment, if he or she, or if they're just, or if, that's fine. I just
Oh, yeah.
happened to notice that, and we were so focused
So,
on the other part.
I think that's a grammatical change.
Sure,
So, and
yep.
we've already approved those, making
And we've
that
been
changes.
consistently
So
making that,
I think
so.
we can make that change even after we approve
Sounds
that
fair.
policy, because it's just a pronoun change that we've already approved
That works for me.
as a board. So, does that work? Okay.
Perfect.
All in favor? 7-0.
Did the motion, was it to adopt?
It was to adopt, yes.
Third and
It was a third and adopt, and that carries. Okay, and now we need to look at policy DAF, Administration of Federal Grants. We need to accept for third reading and adopt policy DAF, Administration of Federal Grant Funds. Motion by Tom, seconded by Beth. Is there anything on this, Gina?
There were no changes from
No
second to
changes.
third.
So there were no changes, so.
Was this going to have legal review, or it already had it?
It already had legal review.
Okay.
The only change that Gina had to make was between, I think, 1 and 2, and it was the pronoun change, right?
Yep.
So everything else has been pretty much set. So all in favor? All right, 7-0, that's passes, carries. And then we need to look at policy EFD, which is, I need a motion to accept second reading of policy EFD. This is wellness. I need a motion by Beth, seconded by Tom. And again, Gina.
Yes, so, no changes. Okay.
The
So
more
it's the same as the
legalese in
first.
the policy, the less discussion.
What's that?
I said the more legalese, the less discussion.
Exactly, that's the way we
The
like it.
longer the policy, the less discussion.
Yep.
Definitely,
Well,
definitely.
I had asked questions of Gina as far as how it matched up to what we're doing and whether we're going to get any changes, and after the fact, she sent me some specifics on it, and I guess the root of it is that we don't have to change anything. My only concern about it is I'm just wondering, are we still in the situation where we're putting a lot of food onto the meals that are just ending up in the trash cans?
Potentially.
No, but when we first made the changes to our menus, and we saw a huge increase in the amount of trash being generated, food that just plain and simply wasn't.
No, we've kind of switched that, and we're back. In the last couple of years, we've made some improvements to our lunch program. I mean, is there food that ends up in the trash? Absolutely, but not like we had seen before. And just to answer additional questions, I'm not sure if I forwarded it to you. On page 1 and 2 of the policy, there's nutrition promotion. We have to do at least 5 of the following. So the ones that we are not doing are vegetables are incorporated into the main entree. Right now, we're not doing, students are offered a taste test for a variety of obvious reasons. And we don't do the students provide feedback right now. But all the others are already incorporated into our daily practice.
They provide feedback because that's what's in.
You don't have those little bitty spoons like they do at
Great,
the ice
the
cream
formal-
shop?
Not yet, we're gonna get there.
So are we good with this one? Any other questions on this? Okay.
Not exactly food related, but are we going to, will the program continue where the kids are getting
It's
free lunches?
continued to the end of this school year.
The
Oh, it was
school year
continued to
now,
June
'cause it was
30th?
It
only-
was December 31st, but now it's for the end of the school year.
Okay, sorry for the
Okay.
interruption.
That's a good point to identify.
It's a good point because we need to be in compliance so that we can see everything, so. Are we all in favor of this for second read? That's 7-0.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the last one that we brought forward is new, so I need to need a motion to accept for first reading the policy KCD, public donations to schools. Moved by Tom, seconded by Beth. This has been brought forth because of, all the work we've been doing on the turf field and the gifts that we've received, and we've got gifts coming in from HB Elevates. But again, those are donations from HB Elevates. So we went and we're looking at 2 policies. This is the first one, public gifts and donations. We read through it. We really started to question, like, when you see the paragraph where we started to make the changes, we used to say that principals may accept non-monetary gifts valued at $1,000 or less for school. Notice of such gifts must be made to the superintendent. The problem with that is that certain things like boxes of goldfish and tissue boxes and all sorts of very, incidental things would be in that category. So we felt like $1,000 or thus the principals can accept those gifts. The superintendent can accept all non-monetary gifts for the school district, and then we would be notified of anything that's valued over $1,000. And the same thing with the accept monetary gifts. We changed that from 500 to 1,000 because of things like the DC trip, where families many times donate an entire school year. So we wanted the principals to be able to accept those. They would notify any cash gifts to the superintendent or their designee, Kelly, and then, like Kelly. And then we changed the 1,000 to 1,000 to 5,000, and then the rest of that. And then also we crossed out and a report given to the board by the end of the school year, because we don't get a written report. So we just thought that that was the way to go about this on first reading. We understand that you will probably have some changes that you want to make. We accept your changes that you're going to suggest, because I can hear them coming. Go ahead.
It doesn't say it has to be a written report, and we do get reports when
Right.
it's done.
Yes.
I would like, not,
Like
I don't.
notification?
I'd like somehow, I think leaving it alone
agree.
by the end of the school year. I think the board would like to know when we get donations. I don't
Right.
see anything wrong with the wording as it is, because I think that's being done right now.
Okay.
Well, and I think the other thing is it's important when maybe this has been, golly, like 4, 5, 6 years ago, there was a point where we didn't have basic supplies in our nurse's office, and that included snacks, because we were depending upon the goodwill of the community, but that really should have been a budgetary item. So, yeah, we need to know if that's becomes a practice, and I mean, whatever it is, like if it's something that really should be a budget item, we shouldn't be relying upon good luck.
So are you suggesting that you like the policy as written and we shouldn't make any changes to it? Except for maybe the 500 to 1,000, or are
I
you?
like the change in monetary value.
Well,
Okay.
I don't mind the change in monetary value. I actually think that I have some, I think there's that last sentence that says all gifts will be acknowledged in writing. Do they really acknowledge all gifts? Because I mean, anything over like $250 probably needs to be acknowledged in writing so somebody could get the tax write-off.
They are, so monetary gifts are all acknowledged. They are.
And non-monetary? Monetary and non-monetary?
Monetary. So that paragraph's about monetary
But it
gifts.
doesn't say that.
Well, in that sentence, I'm not sure. That all gifts should be acknowledged in writing by the recipient. It could be a non-monetary gift that's over $250 that still should be acknowledged in writing for the benefit of that person's tax return.
So would you like us to pull that sentence out?
Yes,
and
please.
just say all gifts?
But I
will be
do think,
acknowledged.
I don't know how the report, you guys think about how you want to report back, but I do remember the problem, and we should
Okay.
not rely upon donations to pay for, to supply things we need.
I think part of the problem is it's in a report given to the board by the end of the school year. We don't necessarily do it that way. And so it might not, gifts that come in May may be reported in September, so we just, maybe not the time frame or something like
But
that.
that's by the end of the school year.
Well, so
No.
I guess we were interpreting it very black and white, that in the June board report, there
Yeah,
would
we
be a
were, kind
list. And we were saying, no, that's not how we do it. What we actually do is, because we don't want to not acknowledge at the board level a gift that was made in September. Sorry, we'll acknowledge you in June. We wanted, so let's, policy committee can kind of play around with
Yeah,
that.
we'll do that.
And it seems to me like we maybe need to look back, maybe by like September, because that's really the beginning of the budget cycle.
Would you rather have the word during instead of by?
Yeah, maybe. That might help.
I mean, right, because that's the earliest you're gonna be thinking about budgets is July, August?
July.
Okay, so
July.
we'll keep the monetary change in, we'll play a little bit with the notifications for both types of gifts, and we will, change a little bit of the, we'll bring it back with, Gina, are you writing all that down? You just look like you're diligently writing notes, that's great, because I don't have it in front of me. Okay, all in favor of first reading? Thank you, that's 7-0, that carries for first reading, and I believe, holy macaroni,
Right on schedule.
Do you have any comments?
right on schedule. So we are going to need to go into non-public and then we will be adjourning and then going into a non-meeting.
You want to have the highlights and report out first?
Oh, sorry. Thank you, I lost my agenda in all of my papers. I think HB highlights we're gonna skip tonight, we will save them for next time.
It's one
Oh,
little
Beth,
thing. It's
okay,
one tiny
quick,
thing.
quick.
Just a thank you, because I keep seeing every day more subs that it's their first day, and they're amazing. So thank you to like all of the subs throughout
You're
the
very
district.
welcome.
Thank you. You're one of them. Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Just once or twice,
Yes.
so
Yes,
it doesn't
but
really count.
no, it does. It really does. Thank
Okay.
you. So.
And then, process observer, Krista, I'm sorry, I almost stole your thunder, or didn't let you have any thunder.
No, we went a little bit over, I think mostly, believe it or not, the athletic protocols, but otherwise, I think the timing on everything was very appropriate, and it was good discussion.
Great, thank you.
We had public input, which always screws us up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I need, let me get this. I need a motion that the board by roll call, oh no, that's the wrong motion. Help me find the motion. Sorry, I need to read it, I'm not good at
You know
like,
why we're going in?
yes, A, B, and C.
I move that the board go into non-public by roll call pursuant to RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2, sections A, B, and C?
Yes.
That'll do.
Do you want to read all this or not? Is that it?
Do you want me to read it? Oh,
No.
A, the
No,
dismiss.
you don't have to read it, that's fine, A, B, and C, that's good. Okay, I need a second.
Which is compensation, hiring, and reputation.
Okay.
I thought he made the motion. I
He
seconded.
made the motion, Tom made the motion, Beth seconds. I need a roll call vote.
Cindy, yes.
Liz, aye.
Krista, aye.
Holly, aye.
Tom, I.
Beth, aye.
Kate and I.
Great, so we are now
Are you
in
leaving?
non-public
I just
at
got someone to say, like,
8:46
someone
PM.
listening